Just like that, we are back here in the studio for the second and final set of the day. Shout out, though, to our chair sponsor here in the SPL, and that is Max Nomic. In just a moment, you'll see the guy who has done the least amount of – oh, no, it's Aggro that's done the least amount of work. But he's not here, so I'll defend –
Don't defend him.
Aggro and say that Mifflin didn't do anything. But shout out, as always, to our chair sponsor here, Max Nomic. The most comfortable chairs
Look
around.
Look at me, Dave. Hey, there's video evidence. I built that chair.
But all right, so actually this is a really good – see, like if you ask Kindu Man what's most important, it's managing the people and getting them in the right place at the right time and making sure that their work is good. You've said it yourself. That's like the easiest chair to build. There's like 4 screws to put in there.
All right.
So who did most of the work, making sure you didn't like stab yourself with a screw, or the person who screwed in 4 things?
He didn't make sure of anything. He read the instructions for the 4 screws.
I know. I'm playing devil's advocate. We've gone down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, back down.
Maybe a little bit. All right, no. This is great. This is the start of the desk here, and Miff is already getting me riled up. Fantastic. Atlantis Leviathans versus Oni Warriors is the matchup we've got next for you. Jade Dragons, Valkyries be the headliner tomorrow. Solar Scarabs, Camelot Kings will round out that weekend. This is an interesting matchup, the Leviathans up against the Warriors, because the Leviathans have been really heating up so far in Phase 2 here in the SPL. They want to join the Olympus Bolts as the only 2 undefeated teams up on top. The Oni Warriors have been such a hard team, I think, to lock down here. You don't know what type of Warriors team you're going to get. And I think maybe the most important matchup here, Miff, is going to be out of the solo lane. We've seen solo laners have big performances across the league so far here in Phase 2. And I think Julio is starting to be one of the best to do it here in the league.
Yeah, he's got a versatile god pool, but maybe doesn't have to dip too deep into it too often, is allowed to play that signature tier just about all the time, doesn't it feel like? I mean, what are you going to do? Are you going to ban the tier? It's not exactly one of those meta picks, so Julio being a specialist with this god is generally allowed to play it. I'm glad that we mostly have tier clips here as well to suit my point. But to speak to your point, Dave, and how Soul Laners have been doing incredibly well here in Season 8, I think Julio is essentially one of the premier laners that has exemplified this new rotational style. He likes to leave that lane very early on. He wants to be involved in these early Gold Fury skirmishes. Very often you'll see him around level 8, level 9, just diving the tier 1 tower, making any mid laner's life a living hell. This guy is a menace on the battleground.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning one of the 2 wins that you saw here in Phase 2 was against this Dragons team. It was a close back and forth set, except almost for game number 3, where it felt like the Leviathans were just kind of able to run away with things, and Julio was one of the guys to do it. And it's so interesting, this tier pick, because it feels like it's something that's so comfortable in the wheelhouse of a couple of guys in the solo lane, but only a couple of guys will pick it up. It's a strong pick if it's put into the right hands, and I think Julio definitely has the ability to play that pick at the highest level. We've talked about him, and now he'll join us. Julio with me for the pre-game interview. Julio, thanks for sitting down with me first and foremost. You got the Warriors here in your matchup. You're going up against Nika, who has been a driving force out of the solo lane. What are you looking forward to here in this matchup? Might be muted over there. I don't know if it's your headset or the little button on the bottom, Julio. I imagine what you're saying is he's a fantastic competitor, and he is...
This guy sucks.
Yeah, this guy sucks.
He couldn't stand me at all. Oni Warriors who? I'm Julio, by the way. I'm not Mifflin in this scenario.
No, you're not. You name-dropped yourself. You got you? Do we have you there, Julio? Testing. Maybe? Give me a hello. No, he's refreshing now. Oh, wait, no, now he's back. This is...
Hello?
Oh, hey! Julio, there we go. All right, we're in. We'll give you the chance to answer, not Mifflin. You up against Nika there in the solo lane. Has to be a matchup you look forward to. Which way do you think this one will go?
Yeah, he said he sucked. No, I mean, obviously he was popping last split. Obviously, he's a tough opponent to face, and yeah, obviously we want to win, and we'll try to bring Nika down somehow.
Absolutely.
I think he's the best on the team.
And looking to win, and I agree with some of your assessment there on how Nika's been playing so far. Actually, all of your assessment with how Nika's been playing so far. You guys are undefeated so far here in Phase 2 of the SPL. You say you're looking to win. How much of this is now trying to keep that undefeated streak alive, or are you really just trying to make sure you get this meta figured out and trying to get some momentum on your side? Not so concerned with the undefeated tag.
Yeah, we don't really care about the undefeated tag. I mean, obviously we want to win every game, so that comes along with it. And I think this meta suits us really well. I think we adapted decently. And yeah, obviously we'll have to like, you know, get used to it like
Sure.
1 or maybe 2 weeks more, and that's it.
Hey, if it's only going to take that short amount of time to get you guys at full power, I'm nervous for the rest of the league. Kind of final thoughts here. We're going to see tier out of you today running down the back line, then.
Maybe.
Maybe. Hey, Julio, thanks for sitting down with me. We'll let you go get ready and best of luck.
Thank you.
And you heard it there from Julio Miff when he thinks Nika's maybe playing like the best player on this Oni Warriors team. And I don't have a hard time disagreeing, admittedly, with some of that. I think Nika has been such a stalwart force for this Oni Warrior squad, and Julio and Nika, I think, is going to make for a great matchup.
Yeah, accurate identification of the threat coming from the Oni Warriors here. Nika has got a Q named after him for good reason. This guy has been dominant out of the solo lane, the Tsukiyomi coming to mind in the...
What is the reason?
For the Nika Qs?
Yeah.
It's because he's so sick, Dave.
Oh, I thought it was because people were like trolling his games or something.
No, the Nika Q is the Q you want to get into because the
Got
games
it.
are super serious
Okay,
and high
okay.
tier, and they
Got
hang
it.
out with the
So it
chillest
is a good
dudes
reason.
and at the coolest restaurants. Yeah, Nika, great out of the solo lane. I was going to talk about his Tsukiyomi a little bit before you derailed me, and now I'm looking at a Sun Wukong, so let's talk about that instead.
Yeah, please.
Let's just talk about his playstyle in a broad sense. It has been a very backline disruption-centric playstyle. He does have some of that propensity that I was talking about with Julio to rotate out a lane early on to get involved in these mid 3v3 fights, and I think that's only going to be more so now with these post-boots world. You just get your items online a little bit more quickly. You can be tankier. You can start diving these towers the more you like.
And I like Nika here on this King Arthur. It's been a pick. You know, we mentioned how Julio on the tier has been kind of synonymous. I think Nika on the King Arthur has been a little synonymous here so far in Season 8, but a pretty flexible god pool. Anything that's going to give him the ability to find that backline a little bit easier, I think, is something that Nika takes advantage of. So then it's about how the Oni Warriors can play around that solo lane if the rest of the guys can start to stand to the task. In my eyes, Mifflin, I think outside of the solo lane, I start to shift him towards the duo lane a little bit. I mean, it's been no secret, I think, that Neil and Vote have had a tough time getting their feet under them. I think we've talked plenty about the Oni Warriors and their living situations and where they are and how that has played in to some of their performances. But talk about going against Rongyu and Yarkor, but also talk about going against Neil and Vote. I mean, there are big names on both sides of this duo lane here, so there could be some fireworks there as well.
Yeah, we have seen Neil and Vote struggling a little bit together, and I think it could be, and due to what you alluded to with the living situation, but maybe
Sure.
a little bit more so a desync in what's been the strategy, if you would. Occasionally we'll see Neil Ma try and go in a little bit more aggressive than it seems like Vote is willing to do, and I have not seen that same level of desync from the Leviathans. I mean, Rongyu and Yarkor, it's like these guys are connected at the hip. They share one mind. It feels like at times they are so consistently playing around each other, but that's not to say that the Oni Warriors don't have the capacity to play to those peaks. Each one of their players individually is incredibly talented, but the conversation around this team throughout the year so far is when are they going to shape up? When are they going to live up to the expectations that we have of them? Every single week, they're running out of time.
We saw that kind of glimmer of what we expected from this squad leading into the Phase 1 playoffs, didn't we? Where it was like, wow, you get a couple back-to-back champions, you mesh them with some fantastic players from SSG. Like, there's no way that this team falls short. And it's just taken a little bit of time to get their feet underneath them. But I agree with your assessment there, Mifflin, where it's time. You know, we're getting to be halfway through the year. It's time to get those wheels rolling and see some serious improvement on a consistent basis. And this would be a very great but also tough opponent to get some of that momentum started again. So let's catch back up with picks and bans, though, for game number 1. Gilgamesh taken off the table. On the other side, Sol and Ymir will also take a seat. So let's try to limit a little bit of what wrong you can do there, and then maybe Shinto on the Sol out of the mid as well.
Yeah, very standard bans across the board here so far. Wouldn't be overly surprised if we see Yamoja join the bans across the top. Leviathans,
right.
though, do throw a little bit of a wrench in the loop. Serket getting removed immediately is one of Cuvo Fred's best gods, I'd say. He's been very consistent on this pick this year, and Cuvo Fred is a player that I think that they are right on the Leviathans to try and target out. He's had a little bit of a slower start in the regular season, generally has been one of the most consistent junglers during that regular season play, and then even elevates it further at that land stage. So trying to target out a player that has been struggling a little bit here, make him go deeper into his god pool, going to put him on the back foot beginning.
Yeah, Cuvo Fred on Serket just feels great. So I think the eyes are correct here for the Atlantis Leviathans. This is a moment where the Oni Warriors have to juggle a little bit. It depends what they want, what they're prioritizing first overall, because the Oni Warriors will get the first pick here. So, the Gilgamesh is gone. The Tiamat still available. That's something you might see the Oni Warriors pick up, but instead they don't want it, so they'll take that one away. And that does leave the likes of the Emoja open, and I think that receives a bit of a wrong you buff, doesn't it, in a game like this, where we've seen Emoja fall a little bit further in the drafts, but up against someone like Wrong You, the priority might have to be a little higher. But I think that's maybe not doing as much respect to Neil. Neil can also play the Yemoja at a very, very, very high level, and that means the Leviathans will take it away fearing a first pick, and instead it'll be Loki first overall here in Game 1.
Loki is a god that has had a huge resurgence since his rework, and I remember the fans at home, the Reddit threads, the Twitter threads, everyone saying, "What have they done to my boy Loki? He's not that one-shot stealth split push god anymore." Instead, now he is a little bit more so involved in the match. He wants to get inside of these early skirmishes, get involved in these fights. Has an incredibly strong early game and doesn't really fall off that hard either. I think that seeing Loki in this first pick position is something that we can generally start to get used to, but when you take something like that first up overall, the Leviathans aren't going to leave a lot on the table. Raijin and Guan Yu together, hard to argue against these two picks. You've got damage, you've got initiation, you've got wave clear, and sustain for your team.
Right, you've already got the jump into the back and find lockdown, and then the follow-up on the jump into the back and find lockdown. There is a bit of that, though, with the Oni Warriors here. Loki, you've gone over there a little bit. The Morrigan has started to see a rise in play here in this phase. It's largely been the bolts that have brought that one to the forefront, but it's seen great value. Now here's a pick that hasn't quite seen the same rise. Granted, we haven't had that many games so far in Phase 2, but enough that one pick still stands out as a pretty low pick rate.
Yeah, Apollo, interesting selection for the ADC here, so high up in the priority order. Every single hunter in the game was available to be selected here. He decides to go towards the Apollo. What am I seeing right now from the Oni Warriors draft? Well, double stealth, that's going to be pretty hard to deal with in these late-game team fights. In particular, Danza Burrow is going to be very susceptible to being caught out of position by either the Morrigan or Loki. But the Morrigan, having that Changeling ultimate, also brings a little bit more global presence. Could utilize this Apollo transformation to just join the fight in the duo lane, go over to either side lane, and get involved.
Well, Daji is going to take a seat here. Panatom still needing a pick for the Atlantis Leviathan, so the team's potentially somewhat mirrored in their picks here. Guan Yu certainly out of the solo lane. Loki, you would guess, out of the jungle then for Cubo Fred. So both mid and hunters, though, locked in for both teams. So that'll mean the focus is centered elsewhere. Largely in the jungle now in the ban column for the Oni Warriors is Daji and Erlang Shen both take a seat. And then in the solo lane for the Leviathans, as the ghost chair spins around.
Neil, where you at, bud?
What do you mean? He's right there.
Oh, can you see him?
Yeah.
I guess... I'm reading it right here. Production said only dumb people can see Neil Ma?
What a garbage joke.
You can't just do that to me, bro.
I can if it knocks you off balance like that. Leviathans, I'll bail you out there, Myth. Leviathans, they take the Odin and the Osiris
Production's joke
off the board. Actually, I think it's probably smart to take away the Odin, because the Odin-Morrigan combo, that double cage combo, was so threatening from the bolts. I think the Leviathans learn a little bit from that matchup and take them away.
Yeah, I think that the Fafnir is going to be incredibly strong for this team, just for a little bit of a ranged engage, and it's something that the Oni Warriors would have likely liked to have for themselves. They don't have very much initiation, is what my point was going to be, and then this Terra got locked in. That does help them out a fair bit here, but it's not the strongest initiation. Terra is really known for her counterpunch playstyle, utilizing that Earthen Fury to just get a little bit more survivability. There's your CC core. There's your initiation. Cthulhu locked in. And, well, the conversation around him back in Season 7 was, this guy just CCs people too much. Descent into Madness makes him so strong inside the team fight. And we have seen him a couple of times here in Season 8, but has struggled to find his footing. We'll see whether or not Cthulhu can do it here.
Is he going to be in the solo lane, or is it going to be Terra?
I don't want to do any... What were those
not
eyes?
Going there.
Yeah,
we're not doing
there at all.
The Leviathans will lock in set for their 5th and final pick here. So, Leviathans, they got Raijin, Guan Yu, Danza, Fafnir, and Set. Individually, a lot of strong picks for the individual players on the Leviathans. In your eyes, Mifflin, do the Leviathans have a draft that works well together? How does that draft work well? What are they looking to do?
They're looking to dive inside of these team fights. Danza Burrow going to be able to use that rocket to dive with his team. Set going to be teleporting to the back line. Fafnir has one of the longest jumps in the game, so you better believe he's going to be in the back line as well. It's all about that spearhead aggressive composition from the Leviathans once the team fight phase starts up, whereas the Oni Warriors have got a great pick composition. The ability for the Morgan and Loki to find one-shots is incredibly high. If anyone's out of position, well, you can get double Apollo dunk. If someone's isolated on the map, they're looking at a 2v1 situation. I think it is worth noting, I do believe it is going to be Cthulhu solo here, and with the changes in Season 8 and with the changes in this No Boots patch, Cthulhu generally goes for that Vampiric Shroud in that first slot, gets a little bit more sustain, and gets a ton of damage with the Helmet Tree.
If that is the case, it's a good thing Hindu's casting, because he is he's about the biggest fan of the Vampiric Shroud as there is, if I remember correctly. He gives me a smile, he gives me a nod, so I'm not far off base there on that one. Mid lane matchup, Raijin up against the Morgan here, Mifflin. Is there any nuance to this one, really, or are you looking at farming and then they'll both do the Raijin and Morgan things in the team fight?
So Raijin is actually going to be looking to kill this Morgan. Level 2, jump on him, Thunderclap. Hopefully Set's there to follow up. Morgan is going to be doing the farm thing, as you so eloquently stated. Going to be sitting inside the lane, clearing out those waves, going to the mid camps, trying to get those, and likely won't be able to get too many of them, as the Raijin does have a good deal of advantage inside that 1v1. Instead, maybe going to put a little bit more emphasis on stripping away some of the farm from her Loki, going to those back camps. And as a jungler, I can speak for all junglers in the chat as well. That doesn't feel too good. I don't like it when my mid laners take my farm.
No, that doesn't feel great at all. Unless you're the mid laner taking the farm, then it feels fantastic.
That's what you do.
Yeah, I like stealing that farm from you. That's awesome. I'm curious, does it feel like the Oni Warriors draft in a team fight is kind of centered around creating kind of discourse and confusion almost? You got a massive Cthulhu in your face, locking down some CC. How difficult is it going to be with double stealth there with the Oni Warriors?
Yeah, it's a high execution composition here from the Warriors. The Morgan and the Loki really are the two gods that have to step up to the plate. They have to perform well, because Terra, Cthulhu, once you're inside the team fight phase, not exactly high execution.
Right.
The Terra is going to give your team survivability, and the Cthulhu is going to find that CC regardless. It's whether or not the Loki and the Morgan are able to utilize that space creation.
Well, look, this is a big game for the Leviathans. They are 2-0 right now. If they win this one, they are tied atop the standings at 3-0 with the Olympus Bolts. And the Oni Warriors, all things considered, have had a pretty decent start to their phase here so far in Season 8. They are 1-1 in the standings. If the Oni Warriors are able to get the win over the Leviathans, it would be massive in the momentum department. Game number 1, Leviathans and Oni Warriors, starts right now.
Thanks so much, Dave and Mifflin on the desk. Joining me for the cast today is going to be none other than Gormizer, and of course, the best cameraman SMITE has ever seen. Yeah, there'll be a few camera people upset about that. It's Doug, giving us all the action live today, and into the game we go. Honestly, go on paper, we're looking at what happened at the LAN for the first phase. Oni Warriors had a good time for themselves, and now heading into week 2, they're looking to really capitalize on, well, the changes to the map and the meta and see if they can find some wind.
Yeah, I mean, so much had changed that when I saw this Apollo locked in, it's so rare that we've seen it that I almost was wondering if it was going to be a Nika pick for it, because he'll play anything and everything on his streams, and I've seen him take Tiamat over there, anything that he can pick up, but the Cthulhu pickup is going to be really interesting for him.
Going back to the Apollo real quick,
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I'm going to say about that, if we've seen a lot of attack speed builds from these hunters, the steroid
he
that
does
Apollo
the attack
gets,
speed kind of better, right?
Precisely. His passive Audacity is going to allow him a little bit more in terms of generation of these auto attacks faster. So it does make some logical sense of attack speed focused characters could see a rise. Plus, global rotations. I guess more importantly, we are seeing, though, the Terra in the duo lane here, not in the solo lane, like we saw in previous sets earlier on with the Kings this weekend. It will be Nika on that. Cthulhu, his vote does eat a hammer early on from Wrong You. So far, so good in the laning phase for both teams in the duo lane. No one really having an advantage there.
And I like this because Neo, I mean, look at the amount of setup he's going to have, plus the sustain that they're going to be able to bring. I mean, this should be a pretty leisurely lane for Vote, although I think that right hammer is the exact showcase of to what you do need to be worried about. There's still just enough setup on the other side, especially early on, that you're going to have to keep your beads on the ready. But like you had mentioned, the attack speed that he's already going to get, I'd kind of joked earlier that the vines being removed were like a pseudo nerf
Technically is, yeah.
to him, because people love to run to the jungle, smack up a couple of autos just to get that passive stacked a little faster, but ultimately you're having a better time. Look, you get rid of those, you add a Harpy and a Draugr, like you're going to be fine, I think, if you're Vote here. And it's this item build that's been coming through, especially if you look towards the overcapping. That passive stacks onto that, so maybe you're going to lean heavily into it. But we've also seen a little bit of crit here and there. Apollo's not necessarily well, depending on the meta, he's known for the crit and not for the crit. And so we'll have to see what Vote decides to do with it. But having the setup that Neil's going to bring, I think this is going to be a pretty fun dual lane for the Warriors.
Speaking of Neil a bit more as well, did start off this time around looking towards maybe a Lotus Crown here, I would say, or the Tyrannical Plate Helm. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the Lotus Crown, I will say, in this build. And I do like this item, the 20-year-old process. Dardas in mid lane, under pressure from Panitom and Shinto, just too far forward. The Des did mention, what can the mid lane do in the early game for the Morrigan? And that's exactly what we saw Leviathans do there, try and keep the pressure rolling onto Dardes during these early stages.
And that's the kind of pressure that I think you need to apply. And now it's Yarkor who's in a little bit of trouble. Looks like he should be just fine out of there. In fact, they might try to turn it around on Vote. But the pressure that Shinto, first off, on one of his signature picks here in the Raijin is going to be able to apply is crucial to keep Dardes down. Because if you're talking about, hey, who are the best Morrigan players in the league, Venenu's going to come to your mind first, probably. And Dardes should be up there at the same time, maybe slightly behind, depending on how this game goes. But he has constantly been this thorn in people's side. Last year, it was one of his favorite picks, and it caused a lot of trouble for every team that SSG went up against. And I think that's something that the Warriors are going to be able to lean heavily on, especially, look, Morgan Cthulhu was the combo. You get two Cthulhus in the middle of a team fight, there's no Nemesis on the other side, no quote-unquote direct counter outside of maybe a Sunder to help burn them down faster. And that should really enable Dardes late game to be very, very prominent in forefront. Unfortunately, that does take a few minutes to get there, so he might struggle a little early on.
No, completely agree. And when you look at the team fight phase for Warriors here this game too, I'm starting to feel like it's going to be a bit interesting because Dardes and Cuvo are both going to be wanting to almost join the fights late, be hidden away the whole time. So target options for Leviathans is really going to be Cthulhu and Terra, and if at best, the Apollo that could take to the skies. So the question is, can Leviathans get the jump off in these engagements early and find some of these picks before they can get into those stealthy positions? Or can Cuvo and, of course, Dardes on these two picks make an impact with these re-initiations or surprise initiations from the stealth?
I mean, it's something I think Mifflin had mentioned a little bit, but like Dardes, I like the combination with specifically the Cthulhu because we saw so much of it last year and how potent that can be in a 5-on-5. But technically, you could just turn into another Loki, and then you're seeing one person pick off, let's say, a mid laner, one person pick off a carry, and all of a sudden, they just don't have anyone to really deal damage for them anymore. It's going to be difficult to get an execution like that off.
Yeah, the double Loki would be interesting. I don't think I'd necessarily want to see it.
I'm not expecting it.
But it is really down to what Dardes feels in the moment is the best option. I mean, the best players in the world, Morrigan, will basically change when needed to whatever there is required. But some players, myself included, because I'm lazy, will just pick one guy and go, this guy is carrying, I'm just going to pick this over and over again, unless things go bad for them and they've not got the items online anymore. Because take into account, you are stealing their build too. So when it comes to looking at exactly how they're doing, if they're not doing great in terms of actual advancement in power or defenses, then sometimes it's best to, mix it up and go for a different target.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's really interesting. And we've seen that a couple of times the last 2 days. We've seen a lot of the Morrigan where it's like, oh yeah, they're absolutely going to turn into this guy, or why would you turn into them? Their build's not necessarily something you really want to pick up. And yet, either way, it's still been fruitful, at least for the bolts every time they've locked it in.
No kill so far outside of that first blood in the duo lane. At the moment, as you see, Panitom paying a bit of attention to the right-hand side. But builds are starting to develop here as well. Karon's coin in mid lane for Shinto once again. Seems to be a core option for a lot of these mid laners still. The 20% pen, the extra movement speed and sustain you get from this item, very effective. Whereas also in the jungle, the Lotus Crown for Neil Maher, who's getting aggressive in mid as Ronyu now rotates in. Cubo's going to take a ton of damage there at the tail, and actually ult's way worried about the further follow-up there from Shinto, so nice little work out of Leviathan's rotation. But yeah, that Lotus Crown is online. I think it's very underrated at the moment for what it brings you, because as a support player, you're going to get the sustain that you need in terms of regeneration from your starter item, and the MP5 from this is great too, but more importantly, 60 physical prots, but then add on the additional 20 you'll get from whenever you heal yourself, and your teammates too are going to get that. That's better than Gauntlet of Thebes in terms of the aura that it's giving you when it's applied.
It's one of those items that I personally pick up every time a Vote just trying to get out and are not going to be able to get away with his life. And that's a good pickup for the Leviathans.
Yeah, good little pinch on this side. You can see the ward coverage too go. I mean, they didn't really have too much vision of what was going on there, but Vote just caught too far up in that laning phase and gets punished for it. And it's again through Panitom.
And that showcases the downside. Like, Apollo's ult is great. You can go anywhere on the map. Late game, you have tons of mana, so you're not really stressing about it. It takes a little while to get into, though, and Vote really feels that. That timer it doesn't seem like much if you're ulting from your base. Maybe if you're like stressed out, they're taking the Fire Giant, they're at the Phoenix, we got to get there. But for the most part, it's only in those moments where you're like, I have to get out right now that you're going to feel it. And that's a big opening for the Leviathans. They can catch that out every single time. The downside is how that translates into late game stuff. All of a sudden, you have Vote on your left side Phoenix, and you're sitting there trying to stress about a 5-on-4, but you know at any point in time, not only can he rotate in, he can dive the back line. He's just going to be an ever-present threat. And so I like the idea to put pressure on him now. Try to catch him out whenever you can. It's not easy to do on an Apollo. Force his beads, force his ult, get a kill, anything to keep him a little bit behind, at least enough to make sure that you can feel confident in some of those later fights.
Well, Kira Fred was just starting to rotate into the left-hand side here, but they noticed Rongyu in the jungle. So attention will go there for a moment or two, but Rongyu will just throw a hammer, call it a day, and quite easily walk away. Generally, we've seen the Warriors play so far, though, go through Phase 1 into Phase 2. A lot of the early game has come through Neilmar's aggression, and then as the game goes on, it continues. And talking about the aggression now, the purple buff invade is attempted, but Neilmar is under a lot of pressure because of Rongyu and Jarkor. Apollo already left the fray, and the rest of the team can't be here, so they've just left Neil all alone, who will end up falling down here. And that's just another casualty into the bank of Leviathan's coffers.
And we got to see a little bit, like the duality of Terra, right? When your heal goes through and that Lotus Crown procs, which it's one of my favorite items on healers for all the reasons you had highlighted earlier. It's great because you get all those extra protections, but half the time you're going to be getting aggressive. You're looking for the root. That's how Neil started that, and he doesn't get those procs online. And so, yeah, base 60 is still going to be good, but maybe not good enough. They're actually starting to
crushing up Vote, who's out of position again on his own, tries to rotate into the Fury, but all there alone, another kill for Leviathans, and it didn't only cost Shinto's ultimate. Now Leviathans grouping around this Fury again, looking for more picks, keeping this late game squad of what he is at bay, as Dardes dies trying to transform. Neilmar back in the action, Cuvo looking on, looking for a target. The focus is on Panitom. Panitom takes a bit of damage as Cuvo lands that ult, but no mana left over. Neil still giving chase here. I don't really know what he's looking for. I don't think the chase was on for Panitom. 5 kills now for Leviathans. Damn, they are playing well.
I mean, at this point, here, I'm going to throw it out there. Good news for Warriors fans. They did not take the Fury, so the Leviathans are not able to pull themselves that farther ahead. Downside, they are 3,000 gold ahead at 9 minutes. They have just been farming better. They've been stealing buffs. They've been getting the kills better. They are in control of this game. And it's very difficult. I mean, when you get ahead this much early on, I like to look at the way the Warriors draft comes into the late game, but the Leviathans aren't weak then either. Like, you really need to right this ship a lot faster than they would like, whether that's getting Nika involved or if Cuvo can just start finding some of these picks, because right now I look at Panitom at 2-0-2, same thing for Hardcore. You really have to find a way to put them on a little bit of a stopper, at least pump the brakes to make sure this doesn't get too out of hand.
Well, a lot of focus from the Warriors has been towards Nika in terms of people talking about him being the focal point of this team. I guess in terms of his performances, they have been pretty solid throughout the year. And at the moment, they may already be turning their attention to expecting what can Cthulhu bring to the team fights now. Because how this game's gone so far isn't the greatest. I'm a little bit worried about a Cursed Ankh coming into play to deal with him too. Because it is an item, a relic rather, that can cause a lot of problems for Cthulhu in the ultimate.
Yeah, and anything, like, with Sunder already online, something like a Cursed Ankh on top of it, the idea is just, can we stop you from existing? Can we kill you fast?
Talking about not existing, Neilmar still getting pressured again. The walls bought him time, but Rongyu's already there to wrap around. The rest of the team, 2 members in base there, and meanwhile the other member on the right-hand side of the map. This is a surrendered Gold Fury then in favor of the Leviathans, as nobody's going to be here from the Warriors to stop it.
There are plenty of ways to bounce back from this, but a lot of them involve just buckling down for a little bit, playing defensively,
not
really getting
taking the power out of your house, maybe.
Yeah, you had to stop.
We wouldn't do a remake for that one.
No,
that's for sure.
it's 10, 11 minutes in, there's 6 kills on the board. No. They're sitting in a pause screen as long as they need.
You're logging back in for that, but the Leviathans are playing great right now. And I feel kind of unfortunate for Nika, who's going to be sat in that solo lane going, well, I don't know what I can do to impact it, because now Vote under pressure again, trying to get to the sky in time. The dot damage was still applied there, but I don't think it's going to be enough to bring him down. And now it's onto the Draugr here for the Leviathans, just to continue to build the bank of experience and gold.
Yeah, this just feels good at this point. And, you know, to harp on a point you've brought up, not only have they kind of itemized to help kill Nika, but most of the time when we see the Warriors, even in a position like this, it's Nika's rotations that help fix things out. Cthulhu, last year, he had some insane games, some insane plays. In fact, Hardcore should know that better than anybody. He was one of the ones that did it the most. But he's not really the carry, right? I mean, he's going to come in, he can set you up, he can guide you to the well. but you still have to drink the water. And unfortunately, I don't know that that's going to be enough right now, especially with the way that this deficit's going. It's almost 5,000 gold.
Same time, though, we've not mentioned Julio so far in this game, and when this Guan Yu comes into play, the cavalry charge is a fantastic chase tool against some of these carries.
Oh, no.
They're going to try and spread around the map, try and spread the team fight out. So the chase potential is on. Warriors with their back against the wall already, though, at 12 minutes in. 1 Gold Fury already in favor of Leviathans. 2 Dragas, 3 coups. You can see the pace and the dictation of the game from Leviathans. They have started off phase 2 very, very quick.
Yeah, and this is exactly how they want to. I mean, I had mentioned it earlier. Like, the Bolts get up to that number 1 spot, but they've had a couple of 3-game sets that have led them there. The Leviathans not only want to tie it, they want to be there a little more demanding. They want less of a plus-minus. They want to dominate pretty much the way they did in phase 1 of season 7, but they haven't really gotten to climb up to the top the same way since then.
The hardest thing that we've seen from Leviathan so far throughout their history of SPL is they've struggled when it comes to the final hurdle, the land tournaments.
It's always the lance.
And I think even they said themselves they just didn't feel good enough at certain moments, and they're very upset with those performances. But week in, week out in the Pro League, they always come and give it their all and take it to teams. It doesn't matter who they are. And right now, they are taking it to the Oni Warriors, who are really struggling here so far. It is still early game, though, and we're always going to hang on to see if they can turn it around, but I'm just worried where that spark of inspiration is going to come from this team to try and turn this one around.
Their best case scenario would be if we had dropped mid-season right before phase 1 playoffs, right? Like, that's all of a sudden they're able to win that, because like that's what we were talking about this weekend, where it's just their team synergy is so great, but it's their adaptability. They'll play the same 5 picks every single game if you let them. And maybe they beat you in the regular season, but guess what? You know what to ban against or pick against when it comes to the playoffs.
Kivo Fred rotating in the jungle. I just wondered who's going to rotate round, but there's a ward down on that corner to give vision, and Wrong You, meanwhile, was just wrapping around the left-hand side to see if they step up. 3-on-2 in mid lane. Hammer thrown out. Doesn't find a home that time round, and pressure relieved. As now Kivo will just take the greatest Scorpion on the right-hand side and continue farming up. And this is what I was kind of saying with the Warriors' kind of attitude towards the game. It's very much Kivo farms the early game. Farm, farm, farm. And Neil is the dictator of the pace through that. And that's why they're still struggling, I feel like. It feels very regimental almost. It's predictable in my eyes that people can start to play around that more. And that's when around 15 to 20 you'll start to see the Loki make some initiations or potential, but sometimes it can be too late.
And honestly, it's that weird moment where last year that worked out for him some of the time, right? I mean, you have 2 reigning world champs on the Warriors right now, but it was such a, not even a peculiar circumstance. They just played really, really well that weekend to be able to get them to that championship. But a lot of last year, that's what Kivo did, and half the time it would work out well. You get to that late game, and you just have the game of your life. You go from maybe 0-3 to 6-3 in the matter of a couple of fights. And sometimes you go from 0-3 to 0-5. All of a sudden, you just never really get to bounce back.
Well, right now, Shinto's 1-0-3, and he's a whole item ahead in that mid lane over Dardas, a longer 2-level lead too. So that Soul Gem being online, you can feel that goal differential between the two when you can see a whole item purchase advantage over another member. Left-hand side, though, Panitom going to meet Kivo Fred, and you can see how Kivo's managed to hit level 14 ahead of Panitom in terms of farm, but now on the run. The chase still on from Panitom. No one in support coming through here from the Warriors, but Panitom gives up the chase there, realizing it's going a bit too deep into territory, and the Fury is about to spawn soon.
I'll quantify it a little more. Like, you had mentioned, hey, a whole tier 3 item ahead. I'm like, okay, well, that worth's over there in the bottom left. Let's see what it is. That's 2,000 gold right now, just in the mid lane that he is ahead. It's amassed at 6,000. Like, I feel like I blink and all of a sudden they're up another 2K, and that's regardless of that Fury. And now with the Oni Fury coming up, this is one that the Leviathans loved to get last year. It gives a lot of pressure across the map. I mean, it's not necessarily the window closing for the Warriors, but they are really in a position where if this Fury goes to the side of the Leviathans, that pressure just starts to mount. There's still a ton of towers standing for them, so it's nowhere near endgame state, but they got to do something to fix this gold lead.
Wrong You in a comfortable enough position to upgrade both his relics right now. Cursed Ankh and the Sunder online. And the Cursed Ankh, very useful against Terror in team fights. I know I was talking about Cthulhu earlier, but very, very useful against Terror when she pops her ultimate, and again against Cthulhu. So double dipping almost in its effectiveness in these engagements.
Not only that, but in combination with the Sunder, the upgraded Ankh makes you take more damage. Like, you are just going to get absolutely decimated. The front line, as the setup, the desk had kind of highlighted it. Like, it's all Nika, it's all Neil. If they aren't able to do it, you're hopefully getting some picks from Loki, but otherwise, they're just going to get erased.
Wrong You on the front side, going to take a bit of poke from the carries of the Warriors there, but you can see what he did Well, about 10% of his health bar. The Fury, meanwhile, way below 10%. Cubo coming in, looking to try and cause a problem. We'll throw out the decoys. Now, Dardas transforms into Cthulhu and charges on in. Neilmar's there too, but the Cursed Dogs are in play for both teams. Paniton gets the Aegis off to stay alive as the Apollo ducks to the back. Shinto under a lot of pressure from Boat, but Shinto's Aegis buys him some time for his team to come on in. The stunk from Rongyu was huge at the tail end. Shinto is still alive in this engagement, and he will survive. Nika could be a completely different story. 3 members here of the Warriors dead. Make it 4 right now.
I'm speechless. There's no way, at the minimum, you're supposed to lose Shinto there. Like, I cannot understate how difficult a team fight to win that was for the Leviathans. When 2 Cthulhus are zoning that much, you should not be able to do that. And yeah, Hardcore's 5-0-2, he gets all those kills, but Shinto's jukes were absolutely insane.
And Darda's just trying to cause a problem there. Maybe look for a steal to turn something around here.
My.
Can't do it. Another kill for Leviathans. Gives the whole squad Fire Giant buff this time round. And going back to that engagement, some of that will come into Shinto's build too. If I'm honest, there's a lot of life steal.
He got a
in that build
little
already.
bit of healing there.
It's not a ton of life steal, but the Soul Gem, most importantly, that will proc. A little bit of Vamp Shroud as well, giving off that damage in those team fights, kept him alive enough. As well as, in fairness, great protection from his team, because the whole team realized he was under pressure. I don't know what Shinto tells these guys, right? But when Shinto is under threat, I feel like I see the support and the solo laners come out of nowhere to protect him and make sure he gets the peel he needs.
I mean, they got to understand, right? He's got the highest KDA. I think throughout Phase 1, he was the highest KDA in the league in general. It makes sense if he's got this much peel, this much protection. He's 1-0-7. Maybe the kills aren't stacking up for him this time around to help bolster those numbers. But the amount of peel, like you had just highlighted, that comes through for him consistently is insane from the Leviathans. And they do it so often. They get this Fire Giant for free as well. Now they're set up for even more power. Yeah, Oni Fury, but all these tier 1s, they're about to disappear. That's going to be 1,500 gold in and of itself. They were already up 10,000, now 11,000. So they're going to push the envelope even further. And this is just such a dominating performance. I mean, I don't expect to see this in Game 2. This is just so well played from the Leviathans. It almost feels like you need a reset button.
I mean, questions will be asked of if this was an even kill team fight there around that Fury, if the Warriors hadn't lost the early game as drastically as they did, how would that have fight played out instead? And would the damage have been there from the itemization? The question probably is, it could have been completely different.
Oh,
but early game going as bad as it did has now put Leviathans in a spot to give Warriors a goose egg in Game 1. I like this term goose egg, by the way. I've never really used it much, but, you know, big fat zero. Golden duck we use in England. You know?
Yeah, the golden duck?
The golden duck.
That makes way more sense. Well, I'm thinking of a golden goose from something completely different. This is the interesting part. Like, the net worth is so outrageous at this point. Full tier 3 and then some. I mean, Leviathans, if they win a fight here, there's still 3 towers standing, but if they win 2 kills, they're going to be able to push the Titan.
Well, the Titan's very low. Fighting's very low already. Neilmar jumps to the back, trying to slow him down. Good route off on 4 targets, but no one there really had to follow up. Cubo Fred does go for the all-in on Shinto, but gets deleted by Julio and his cavalry charge, who's continuing to chase onto Vote. Vote speed's now down, as is he, as is the Phoenix. Only Nika and Darda's alive. Scrap that, it's just Nika left alive. An absolutely disappointing performance here in Game 1 from Warriors, and an absolutely amazing performance from Leviathans. This is 15-0 in 20 minutes. These guys are here to play this weekend. They took it to the earlier team of the Dragons this week, and today, well, the Warriors need to wake up quick, because I don't think Leviathans are going to give them longer than 20 minutes in Game 2 again.
That might actually be the closest to a perfect game of Smite that you could actually see in a run, right? Like, ideally, you're stealing all of their buffs, but, like, that's an outrageous way to control it. No neutral objectives lost, no team fights lost, no kills dropped, nothing on the side of the Leviathans felt like it was ever stressed out there. And that, I mean, that last fight around that Fury, maybe not the last fight, the fight around that Oni Fury, the first one, you could watch that for hours and hours, just re-watch it over and over again and see new things that just make the Leviathans look better and better each time.
Well, Leviathans fans will be very happy with how things are going right now. Warriors, meanwhile, will be hoping that doesn't get remembered ever again, but it all depends on how Game 2 goes. We'll talk about that after the break.
Hey there, Smite fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true. I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the Smite Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible Smite experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Yes, Mike, I am telling you an Alien wore that. Shoutouts to our SPL sponsor here in Season 8. It's Alienware, and they've been providing us with some awesome gear here. If you want some of that sweet Alienware gear for yourself, go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get a discount on said awesome gear there for yourself. And then at Alienware on Twitter and Instagram, and then Alienware Arena to join their growing global community. Thanks, as always, to Alienware, our title sponsors here in Season number 8. Mifflin's with me, though, to break down game number 1. I think it's unfortunate for the Warriors that we have to break this one down. They get blanked in, just over 20 minutes here in game 1, Miff. A well-executed game plan with 0 stumbles from the Leviathans in game 1.
I don't feel bad for the Warriors at all. If anything, I feel bad for us here on the desk, Dave. How do you analyze a game that was so one-sided, so clear-cut? The Leviathans, I think, you can only sing their praises here. They come out ahead all the way across the board. Normally we'd say, oh, this one player looked really good, or this guy's the reason they found a lead, but all the way across the board, 5 members of the Leviathans, a penta threat team, they all just look strong. What do you do to change up in game 2? Ignore game 1. Oni Warriors,
fair enough.
Best of luck, guys. It's going to be hard to erase that one from your memory, but Haddix was able to do it earlier, so why not the Warriors?
I think then Yarkor kind of became the spearhead for this Leviathan team. It's no surprise when you get a pick like the Donza and you're ahead and you're able to stay aggressive with the rest of your team, you're probably going to have a performance like Yarkor did in this game, a triple kill to kind of cap things off, and then plenty of damage in on the late game Phoenix Siege that would then turn into the game being over. Yeah, when this is happening, when you're just jumping in the rocket and jumping into the enemy base, you're feeling sad if you're the Oni Warriors, and that definitely was the case here in game number 1. So it really does feel like back to the drawing board here, Miff. 2 kills for everyone on the Leviathans, except 7 for Yarkor over there, and the ADC certainly came to play. So when I say back to the drawing board, I wonder how you, well, I'm not going to make you interpret what I'm saying. If you were going to send the Oni Warriors back to the drawing board, is this a pick ban issue? Is this an outplay issue? I mean, are you redoing everything before game number 2 here?
I think the Oni Warriors could fix up the picks a little bit insofar as they had a very execution-heavy composition. The double stealth, Morgan and Loki had to play nearly perfectly. The Cthulhu, I think, can fit into most drafts. The front line was just fine there, but I want to see them play something that is a little bit more in line with standard SMITE. Get yourself an AoE mage. Find an assassin that can start fighting a little bit earlier on as a frontliner or something along those lines. Or maybe just clean up the play on field. And the Oni Warriors are the professionals. I'm sure that they came into this with a game plan that could possibly work out, but the Leviathans didn't really give us a chance to see it.
This is a team that will figure things out. Let's kick off picks and pans for game number 2. The Leviathans, they don't want to deal with the Gilgamesh, so that's going to take a seat here for the first ban. Things starting to, or things shifting here with the Leviathans in the first pick slot. The Oni Warriors will have that second pick slot. So where the Oni Warriors had a little bit of flexibility in what they wanted to let through and what they wanted to pick first, now have to be concerned about what the Leviathans are going to get on the other side. Soul continues to be this priority issue here, Mifflin, and the Oni Warriors don't want to deal with her. Teams this weekend haven't want to dealt with her, and so she'll take another seat.
The Oni Warriors notably did leave Yamoja open and available when they were in that first pick position, so we'll get a good view on whether or not the Oni Warriors just don't think Yamoja belongs in that first phase of bans, or if they're generally just trying to fish for that pick themselves. Now that they're in second pick, if they ban it out here, it means, yeah, they do value Yamoja, but we're trying to pick it for themselves. So I'm very excited to see how this first phase rounds out. Serket going to be banned out by the Leviathans. Oni Warriors take off Tiamat. So far here, just standard bans across the top.
Yeah, it's another Serket ban, as you mentioned there, Miff, and that one getting taken away from Cubo Fred. I kind of want to see it. Look, there's so much pressure on this pick now. I want to see Cubo Fred get it in his hand, see what he can make work. Yamoja does end up getting banned out. It's by the Leviathans this time. So you look at what's still available. The high priorities are Gilgamesh, Tiamat, Soul, you have to feel like. And then it just seems like a little bit of a flexible ban there for the Oni Warriors once Yamoja's also taken away. And so Guan Yu ends up being the answer. Remember, this is the spot where the Oni Warriors first pick Loki there in game number 1. That's not going to be the same answer for the Leviathans here. Instead, Rong Yu will get a priority pick in the Ymir.
I'm surprised to see the Leviathans go ahead and ban out that Yamoja. We know that Rong Yu loves that pick, is one of the best to have done it with the Water Goddess, but Ymir locked in, and we know he's very capable of that one as well. Has great walls consistently. Oni Warriors, though, going towards the Jing Wei inside of that first pick position. Kind of feels like to me they're saying, all right, let's wait on our other picks. Let's see what they're picking on the side of Leviathan so that my mid laner, my jungler, can go for a counter matchup. So what are you going to do for the hunter role? Well, pick potentially what is the safest god in the game, Jing Wei. CC immunity in the ultimate, remove your play or yourself from the play field with the airstrike as well as that passive to make sure you're always inside that lane and farming up. But when you're going for these wait and see style picks, the Leviathans aren't going to wait and see. They're going to go for straight towards that meta.
There we go.
Raijin locked in.
Wondered if we would see the tier from Julio. He hinted at it and said maybe in the pregame interview, and the answer is here. And the answer is tier for Julio in the solo lane here. And the Leviathans are not going to give the Oni Warriors any room to breathe, you have to feel like, just given the way that this draft has formed out. No hunter locked in for the Leviathans just yet, so I wonder if the Oni Warriors feel a little pressure to ban out something in that hunter pool. We'll have to wait and see on that answer. Discordia, the final lock-in for the Warriors in the first phase of picks.
Yeah, Oni Warriors taking more of an eye towards the jungle here. Wheelish removed from the table. Panatom going to have to go a little bit deeper inside the god pool.
Do you let Yarkor play Danza again?
I think you can. I mean, what's the alternative? Ban Danza so he goes towards the Chiron or something like that? There's just so many hunters. No, I don't want to see Yarkor playing Chiron. I mean, Danzaburo is the god of win or lose harder, and they were winning pretty hard, so maybe it is going to be a shift up. But no, Loki removed from the table. Oni Warriors showing a lot of respect towards this god.
I guess that does make sense, though, where eventually you're spending so much ban priority on Yarkor when he's going to play anything good anyway. He's going to play anything at near the highest level anyway. So, you know, the Oni Warriors are like, all right, we're going to control the other facets of the game that we can control and just deal with the hunter on our own regard, kind of regardless of who it is. So the Leviathans will have their pick of the litter in that hunter department. The Oni Warriors still looking for what we're assuming is solo lane and jungle. And Nika's going to get a very strong pick here to go toe-to-toe with the tier. It's the rotational god in King Arthur.
Man, I had almost forgot this character existed. No way it makes it through 10 bans in my mind, but that's exactly what happens. Chiron picked up on the other side of the board, and, well, there's the answer to your question. Doesn't even feel like going towards the Danza-Burrow. Instead, wants to get that early game aggression. Very likely going to be a Bluestone Transcendence build, very power-focused, to get the full ability-focused build. I like it. I like it when Yarkor plays this god because he is one of the most disrespectful hunters we have inside the league. He's going to dash at you at level 2. He's going to dash at you 25 minutes in when he's in your Titan room.
My God.
And he's not going to stop. Why would he?
And we're assuming there's going to be a blink on the Ymir at some point in this game. The Leviathans, every single character, especially if they lock in this Mercury, are going to have gap close ability to run at you as fast as they can. Now, worth mentioning, the Oni Warriors have that as well. So if the Oni Warriors get to a point where they're able to play aggressive, they'll have the ability to push that just a little bit further. If you're strictly going off momentum and vibes in the air from game number 1, though, Myth, I'm looking at the draft the Leviathans have and the ability for that to continue to put out pressure, and I'm nervous.
Yeah, that is a very strong early game composition. I think this Mercury selection for Panatom is very interesting in that we've seen that once Chiron gets picked up, a lot of these teams' answers is, all right, let's lock in Mercury, let's use that Sonic Boom, sit between our own towers, and shut down this god that doesn't really have a great way to escape from Merc. So instead, Leviathans say, late Chiron, there's still no jungler selection from the Oni Warriors. Let's go ahead and get rid of that priority pick and take the Mercury for ourselves. And here's a pick that I wasn't expecting to see overly too much here, but now in 2 sets today, Kali locked in.
Do you think that's the Oni Warriors looking for a little late game insurance of their own? We know that the Mercury is going to scale pretty well. We know that by the time the late game rolls around, those auto attacks are going to be melting down what we're assuming is the backline once Mercury finds his way there. Is that the kind of mindset from the Oni Warriors here? Let's see if we can leverage some late game ourselves as well. Or do you see some value in the way that Kali melts into this Oni Warriors draft?
This Kali is just, we need a late game powerhouse. Let's get something that can get involved in the late. And truth be told, Kali, early game, one of the highest execution gods in the game. She's so hard to perform on before she gets some of that itemization available to her. Once she's 6 stacked on that item build, I'd say she's pretty simple. Press your death immunity button, press the W key on your keyboard, and hold down left click, and just wish for the best. And up against this composition from the Leviathans, she's going to have some very good targets for it, Dave. Ymir, largely immobile. If you pre-beads that freeze, well, that's just free food. If he's your target, reset as well. Even Tyr, once that Fearless and Ultimate has been expended, a decent target for Kali. It's just whether or not this Kali is able to make it into the late game.
Yeah, and that's something the Leviathans will look to not allow the Oni Warriors to do. What's your take, though, on the Mercury on the flip side? Because 2 gods that want to be doing the same thing in the late game, does Mercury have some targets that maybe the Leviathans should be excited about over there on the Oni Warriors?
Discordia is a little bit susceptible. Does have the leap to avoid the Sonic Boom, but if that is used, then at any point, better believe he's going to be coming your way. Outside of that, doesn't have a crazy good matchup into the Jingwei, who can use her own ultimate to escape and can just dash out of the third ability from Mercury as well. I think this Merc is more so about just facilitating his team. It's not really about what he's able to do on his own. It's, can I set up for this Chiron? Can this Raijin get some kills off my CC? And then, well, Mercury does great objective damage, not only to towers, but also to neutrals, almost acting as a secondary hunter.
I think ultimately in a game like this, you're trying to bounce back if you're the Oni Warriors. It's 15-0 in game number 1 in the kills department. We barely crest over 20 minutes because the game goes so fast. What you can ask for from the Oni Warriors is give yourself a chance out of picks and bans, and that's the way I always like to word it. I think the Oni Warriors have done that. Do you think they have here as well?
Gotta think so, man. Early game aggression from the King Arthur. Fafnir should help them out inside the 3v3 and Discordia passive. Well, whoever's doing well in the Oni Warriors is going to start doing a little bit better with some extra power.
Well, Atlantis Leviathans, they absolutely swing here in game number 1, so the momentum swing is going to have to be twofold from the Oni Warriors. They have a good draft. I agree with you there, Mifflin. The ability to kind of springboard back into this game, I don't think can be understated. You got a Fafnir there to provide a Coerce to the Jingwei. And by the time the late game rolls around, the Jingwei stim plus a Coerce is going to be hitting pretty hard. We'll see if the Oni Warriors can capitalize on the draft that they have built. The Leviathans Warriors, game 2, right now.
Thanks so much, Dave. And honestly, if you're a fan at home, you're just hoping the Warriors get out of the early game, if anything, without Game 1 win here. Let's have a look into Game 2, though. And let's be honest, Gore, looking at this one, we've got a bit more safety in the jungle and the mid lane for Warriors too. Discordia and Carly will have a bit more survivability than the Loki, to an extent, and to the Morrigan too.
The immunity that comes from Kali, just once you hit level 5, it's the level 5 immunity part that is the key here. Level 1 through 4, you've got to jump, you've got to stun, there's a lot that can keep you alive, but ultimately they're hoping to just make sure that Cuvo Fred isn't necessarily isolated too early on. But the good news is, Kali fits Cuvo's style incredibly well. I mean, we had mentioned it last game. He likes to farm and then farm and then farm and then play late.
And I think that's one of the reasons why his Circuit is one of the go-tos for Cuvo Fred too, for the most part. Because in the early game, he can just farm up, but when the fight breaks out, he could turn up to the engagement and make an impact. But would rather go back to farming again. Start the game, though, nothing really changes. Nothing really has changed in starts for any teams, it feels like, for me, Gore. I'm not seeing any crazy invades, thank goodness we're not in that meta. But we're also not seeing any weird green buff starts, weird splitting of the camps, so to speak. It's still the same way. And you know what? Myth just called this, of Yarkor's going to hit level 2 and charge at you, and he did just that.
Yeah, the only thing that's really changed early on, even the Leviathan's playstyle is the exact same here. It's just that Mannequin Scepter that stands out on the side of the Kali, which we saw earlier today, so it's not necessarily even standing out that much. But this Mercury is the one that kind of catches my eye as well. Goes on par, in my mind, with the Kali.
I tell you, if he would have caught that with that 3 there, it would have been a bit of trouble for Darkness. Probably cost him his beads, but already poke damage early on. Backside, the green buff getting taken down by Cuvo. Is now Nika might be able to get a solo kill here. Julio's in a bit of trouble, but there is a whole Archer wave whacking on the back of Nika too. But Julio just trying to back away, gets soloed down by Nika. King Arthur versus the Tier.
You want to have an absolute mirror, I guess? Well, maybe not mirror. What's the opposite of that? It doesn't show a reflection. Instead, it's the polar opposite. Nika from Cthulhu, where he's not able to... Yeah, right, a variant. Yeah. That's a perfect term for it.
Thanks.
Where, Cthulhu, he can't carry, he can't do much as Double Freeze comes out.
I mean, beads immediately used by Vote, who will escape. Neilmar walks away too, but you can already see the pressure mounting again in the duel. And Chiron Ymir as a combo. Very effective as a blinking from Cuvo. Looks at Shinto. Meanwhile, Cuvo still stepping up because he knows Nika's rotating early. Shinto does have the Thunder Crash and timed it well to get back towards the wall, realizing he could have been under some threat.
Nika's the real key, though. As I was trying to say, it's just, can he make those rotations? On King Arthur? Absolutely. On Cthulhu? Not at all. And that's the big difference. Not only that solo kill, but just in general teamfight presence, Nika's going to be there. Nika's going to be able to help lead the team, and that's what we see out of the Warriors. That's typically where they play best. It took them 22 minutes, but they did get a kill online in the set. And I expect a lot more of him out of Nika.
Now Panitam finds Dardes. Dardes doesn't use his beads here, still holding on to them, returns some damage back, not a whole ton. And it's all about the red buff more than anything else, so that's why Dardes isn't backing away. However, Rongyu was waiting in the area, and Rongyu will take the red for himself. He's looking to swing a little bit this game, I would say, as now the Leviathans invading the purple buff on the left-hand side. So far, the major focus from the Warriors in terms of advantage has only been in the solo lane. Elsewhere on the map, they are struggling.
And that, hey, that's a Warriors game through and through, right? I mean, they just always seem to hit the same pace, where Nika has a great time, the duo lane, kind of the opposite. I mean, there was a game at one point where Vote lost, what, 8 purple buffs in a row? He just was not able to get there. And I was actually curious. I had this thought last game when I see that green buff, and I think Rongyu answers it perfectly here, which is that idea of, man, now that supports have their own buff, who's going to take the stolen ones away? And the answer is, I'm taking a red every single
Blinking
chance.
from Julio as Cuvo tried to leap away, clammeted into the wall there, and Panitam's there with the CC follow-up too. Nika, though, gets a ton of damage off, and Panitam has no escape now because of that, and Nika's going to get body blocked by Julio. Great work out of the solo lane from Leviathans. Panitam's a bit greedy. Oh, I'm just watching. I'm not going to say anything. I was like, is he really going to tempt fate with that one?
Like, my mind was, well, doesn't have any mana. Maybe you could go in. The same case here against Vote. There's no mana on the other side. Vote's just going to eat those shots. What are you going to do? You're going to dive the tier 1 at 4 minutes in? No, you're not going to do anything about this. He's going to get the back off no matter what. Worst case scenario, he loses the wave.
Definitely times on Vote's camera. I feel like he looks dead inside with how much he gets focused in these games too. and in fairness, I think the rest of the
Part
league,
of that's being Scottish, though.
True. That's also there as well. I mean, the rest of the league, for the most... Oh, keep an eye on that, because Hazer will say something. Now, the biggest issue they're having is that Vote gets focused so much in this lane phase, and I think the league is right to do that from these teams. Pressure the duo lane, because he is one of the ones over in the NA, on the better ping overall, so to speak. Yeah. So taking him out of the fray when the other players are struggling. I've got to be honest, Cuvo, Dardes, Neilmar, they've struggled so far this year. We saw glimpses of how good this team could be at the playoffs LAN for Phase 1. But now it's come back into phase 2 now, and it seems to be the same sort of return business as usual, where they are struggling, especially against the likes of Leviathans, as Wrong Yu walks in, doesn't manage to steal it, thank goodness. I was really concerned he did there.
I mean, just the fact that he has enough pressure to walk forward there, even if you don't get the buff, you're showing face in a spot where you shouldn't feel safe. And there's not even that much return onto him. Same thing can be said over here for Vote. I mean, what are you going to do? Go in to defend that purple? There's a Mercury right around the corner.
So Julio's been left on an island on this right-hand side now, it feels like, after those rotations. And Panitom has started to pay more attention to the left-hand side once more. He just went towards the purple buff, looking for a gank on Vote. Now we'll take the Greater Scorpion too. Equal level so far with him and Cuvo Fred. And no real surprises to see this item picked up here. The starting item we see, the Stone Cutting Sword, a lot of so far at the start of the year.
And, I mean, perfect for Mercury, right? I was curious when the boots changes were announced. I was like, how does that interact with Mercury specifically? But
with no boots?
The answer is like, okay, cool, maybe you don't have the movement speed. He's going to level just fine. He's level 6 now, so he's not really hurting on that. And he gets a Stone Cutting immediately. His power spike's still going to be there. In fact, maybe even earlier.
Doesn't surprise me, though, that an item that strips protections from someone.
Even easier.
And also gives you mobility are the two factors of why we see more of these swords coming into play in the early game. Wing Blades too. Anything with a bit of mobility, any sort of extra movement speed, I think could be a big factor in phase 2, at least at the start. Nika juggles Julio into the air there and just gives him a bit of a poke damage. It looks like he is going, though, for the Stone of Gaia here, Nika. Does make sense with the amount of CC chains of knockups that you may see come into play, specifically, mainly, only from the tier. Meanwhile, across the way, Julio going for the Breastplate of Valor.
And I like that, right? Julio's going to be able to pick up something that's kind of ideally stop these Kali ganks from happening at least as often and keep him alive a little bit longer. He has been bullied out. His tower is under health. Get that breastplate, get more Fearlesses online, so there's a bonus in that, but also survivability that comes through. I'm curious to watch the jungle builds because you had mentioned the Stone Cutting Sword comes out for Cuvo as well. Honestly, with the way they play, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the same items each in a row on both junglers.
Potentially, yeah, definitely could see that as you saw the little attempt in the jungle. They're still tied at 1-1 though, and goal differential is marginal between the two. Red buff invade again attempted by Leviathans here on the left-hand side, but Warriors are here in force now too. Nika even lurking in the background here if this does really pop off. And instead, Leviathans walk away. I think the call may have come out there that Nika was missing from Julio, so Leviathans decided against it. But they will look towards the purple. Neil throws out the hammer, can't find a target, so Panitom walks into the pit. Cuvo Fred stood around that corner. I believe he's on a ward, though, so they can see Cuvo over there. And they're trying to draw him in, if anything. But after the purple goes down, Leviathans release the pressure and go back to their own side of the map.
That's a standard Warriors rotation. Let's get Nika involved as fast as we can. That's what we need. We didn't get to see it a lot in Game 1 because Cthulhu just doesn't do it as well as a King Arthur does.
But this time round, though, Yoko has the 2-level lead in this lane, whereas it was Shinto in the mid lane last time round. Leviathans definitely find a point to focus on and just feel like they keep stabbing it, you know? It's already a wound, and they just like keep poking it to make sure it never heals.
As long as it's take it, twist the knife a little bit, it's going to hurt every single time. And the good news for them is that they've got 5 players, it feels like, that they can really drive that through each and every game. I mean, you highlighted hardcore this time, Shinto last time, sometimes it's Panitom, sometimes it's Julio. Hell, even Wrong Yu gets involved on those occasionally, and a support never gets to do that.
I think Wrong Yu's always involved is the one thing. The one caveat, to be fair. By the time in the jungle, though, meets Neilmar and Cuvo Fred, focusing towards Cuvo there for a moment or two. No real rotation available, though, from the rest of his team. Shinto would rather fall back, pick up some farm in the jungle, as Nika continues the terrorization of Julio on this right-hand side of the map. And there's not a whole lot Julio can really do here with how this has gone. Very defensive aspect towards how this has played out. And this Tier 1 tower will go down soon. Julio realizing he's doing, for me, what I would call, this is called the I was going to say Ninja Dimmy, but his name is Dimmy, and it was Ninja Dimmy once upon a time.
Way back when.
But the Energy Squad, this is what I've seen before, where sometimes you get in a matchup and you have to just concede because the rest of your team are winning elsewhere.
Yeah.
And if that happens, I think Votes had that happen to him a couple of times too, and this is what you see at the top end, is that sometimes you will surrender a lane and go, no, you're on your own.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, like, Julio's down, what, a level and a half maybe at most, and ultimately, Nika's going to win this, but it's how do you rotate into those 5-on-5s? Leviathans always look good in the 5-on-5, so it's more how well do the rest of the Warriors mesh with
Freeze onto Neil and leap away after the wall. Damage after that from your core. Not a whole ton, though, as Neilmar does have that Thebes online now, so a bit more health in that build, working on those protections. with the stacks. Purple invaded again, though, by Leviathans and focus on Neil, but a great wraparound from Neil. 180 hammer puts Panitom on the back foot for a second. The chase still on, though, on Panitom, and he did have the Sonic Boom available to escape. Vote still chasing, though. Wrong you under pressure. He could be the casualty here, as now the Leviathans bit off more than can chew. Damage out from Dardes with the apple onto Yorkor, as Yorkor didn't realize he was going to get turned on by Dardes. Great target selection from him. Meanwhile, though, you see Shinto getting in the fray. He's already picked up 1. Make that 2 on a turnaround. 2 for 2 as the dual lane of Leviathans die. Shinto makes sure it goes back answered.
And the only reason Hardcore turns around there to begin with is because Shinto's making the rotation over. He knows they can get something done. Fortunately, it does still cost him his life. Wrong, you had a really good wall at the beginning of that as well to delay the Warriors. And it's still 2 for 2, but you get 2 onto Shinto, he gets to pull ahead. You lose a little bit of the lead for Hardcore, but at the end of the day, I don't think you're anywhere near as upset. Ultimately, the best news for the Warriors is that First Blood bounty is still pretty much where their lead is. They still have a small gold lead. Small though it may be, it's something that is giving them a little bit of an edge. This time last game, they were already 4,000 gold down.
I think that's the main thing. Warriors are just showing that they can put that last game to bed almost. Yes. Forget about it, move on again, because they are competitive in Game 2 here up against Leviathans. And now there's a situation where you're going to have to keep a check on Shinto. We were talking all about how Yorkor had a 2-level lead at one point. Well, that's been marginalized to 1. But now with Shinto's rotation there to that engagement, he did find more of a lead in that left-hand side. And Leviathans are still, at the moment, in my opinion, ahead in this, even though the gold would tell you otherwise.
This is the moment where the team fight starts to factor into that, right? Like the scales, technically you look at this game state, map state. In fact, the Warriors are winning this game as of right now, but it's where they start to really coalesce into these 3-on-3s, 5-on-5s, 4-on-4s over here in the duo lane of all places. That's where it's been the Leviathan's edge.
I mean, it's always the Hunters are always complaining about cringe ganks and constant focus on the duo side. The main reason is, though, the Gold Fury, the early game neutral objective.
Everything's over there.
Is on the left-hand side of the map.
Draugr over there.
And now there's extra camps. Yeah, there's always more and more on this left-hand side. So no wonder you see more attention from junglers, even mid laners who are greedy as anything for farm. Those mid laners, they will rotate over to this left-hand side for the farm too. And that just leaves the island of the solos still dancing. I really do think we could just make it an actual island in solo now.
Honestly,
Season 8, 9?
I wouldn't be upset. Well, I mean, this time around, you have to have like an opening for the jungler to get there, because Cubo spent a lot of time hanging out. Kind of like the siege map. Like on the side of the siege map, there's those long bridges. We just do that. Just pull it really far apart.
Nika and Julio dueling off on the right side. Don't predict a kill coming through again, though, as Julio does have that wing blade alongside that breastplate now, so he'll be tanky enough to resustain up. Your cause build has the Transcendence online on this Chiron. Looks like it may be going to the execution or the chins next. We'll see. I do want to point out your cause build again, because I feel like he's one of the only hunters this week that I've seen play that has just gone for stacking items still. The rest of the league seems to have been adapting to this attack speed focus. The Ickvals, the chins, Atlantis bows, seen a lot more of those things in the early game, whereas your core has only really stuck, from my recollection and remembered everything, is just stacking items. Devour's Gone has Transcendence every time.
And, I mean, Transcendence, like, it feels good if you're this Chiron, but it's something that, like you said, everyone else has kind of been deviating away. And then the conversation comes through, okay, are you more maybe ability-based? Like, is Ullr also going to still stick to Transcendence, or is he going to go for the attack speed? Same way that we see someone like an Apollo. I mean, even Artemis has jumped back into the fray of things all of a sudden. So Hunters, I think, still trying to figure it out. But, I mean, that Ickval nerf, or not nerf, buff, the opposite, still feels pretty good. So I think that's just the way they've been guiding it.
This gold differential has, like, changed again, though. Warriors have just stretched a little bit in the last few minutes we've been talking. Well, there's been no action on the map. You can just see start to dip a little bit further here in favour of the Warriors. Moment or two was Draugr taken again. And I know we've got a counter up there, but mainly that is for the next couple of minutes. These towers will do a little bit more, so it's harder to dive towers with the Warriors. I just don't think it's something they're going to be looking to do soon.
And you got to see something Mifflin mentioned on the desk, which is that when you see Mercury, good with neutral objectives in general, he's also got the Rage online. There was a small crit, small though it may be. It's a crit nonetheless, and that's going to really give him some power.
Only thing we've not really seen out of this Mercury so far, though, Go, is any lane ganks. I mean, normally with a Mercury, you look for the mid lane gank, the side lane ganks. Panitom has just really been fighting in the jungle for the majority of the time.
And his ult was only used as really a disengage, I think, the one time we've seen it. So he hasn't been as proactive as we see, say, Sam for soccer, who's been playing this Mercury a lot, to the point where it's almost a must ban up against the Dragons. And so I want to see him be a little more engaged on this, even if it's well, I mean, who are you going to gank? Jingwei, now she's going to get away. Discordia might be the easiest target.
Keep the pressure going, at least get the beads, get the relics, you know, on cooldown potentially. But look at this, Warriors grouping up a Gold Fury. And because of Neomar's transformation in front of Wrong Yu, Leviathans know this, but they might have found a good window here, Warriors, to actually take away this Gold Fury. Nika zones away Yarkov from the fight. Ooh. They destroy Wrong Yu, but the reinforcements are on the way. Paniton with the Sonic Boom charge, looking for the shot. Will find it, but it won't be enough for the Gold Furies. Warriors will secure. Left-hand side now, you're trying to see Paniton exit. Yarkov going to give him some coverage too, but the damage already done in favor of the Warriors there, who catch Leviathans with the pants down.
And now you're looking at a spot where maybe you could have fought Cuvo, Fred. No, there's 5 members of the Warriors nearby. You get out of there. Panatom's too low. In fact, Nika might look for a gank.
Yeah, they're going to do the wraparound, but Vote's very deep in lane, so this is all on Cuvo and Nika on their own. But Nika is level 15, very tanky. You can just see how many pips of health bar he's got to continue spinning to win. Bad news is he drops aggro to Cuvo. Fred, as Neil Mar comes in, Vote finally gets up the lane too. This is a long old dive on Yorkor, who's buying a lot of time. The rest of his team not really in a position to do anything about it. Panitom already dead. And obviously Wrong Yu coming back from base. Meanwhile, it's only really a Tyr and a Raijin. And what can they do? Well, I guess they can attempt the Pyro.
Well, that Jauger buff just earned its money, right? Thwarting. That tier 1 should have dropped there, I think, in any other circumstance. So it gets a little bit for the Leviathans.
It didn't help against Nika's damage, though, did it?
No, it didn't stop the dive.
Nika,
it just stopped them from killing the tower. So, you know, you give some, you take some.
Yeah, you're still going to end up dying at the tail end of that. So Warriors now actually battled back well in this game. They've started to find a couple of windows now where Leviathans haven't been aware of these rotations. Dardes, though, versus Shinto. And Shinto just read that very well to collapse all in, realizing he had the time to go in the ultimate. And obviously those Taiko drums, well, he's CC immunity in that, so the apple won't bother him too much.
And he's got 3 levels on Cuvo. Just 1 tick of that ult did so much damage. I want to see Shinto maybe get aggressive here, especially with Julio going for this long wraparound.
And Vote under pressure again, trapped inside. Will dash away from that, but Panitom's still following up. Neil Mar there to support, but Neil can't do a whole lot. Panitom took a ton of damage from Vote, more like, though, and make sure that Panitom is out of the fight. Julio cleans up Vote and walks away alongside the rest of his 3-man squad back to the red buff, where Yarkor is taking it down.
This Mercury pick hasn't really been anyone outside of the Dragons, and so far hasn't really been showcasing a lot here from Panatom.
Does it need to? In fairness to him, in a way, like right now, I mean, his mid lane is ahead, so he's doing the utility of the jungle.
He's the lightning rod.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. The lightning rod just trying to make everybody group around him to an extent or play through him, and him alongside Wrong Yu are causing some problems. Did go for that crit build too this game. No surprises there on a Mercury. So 2 punches later, and you may not be alive.
I was going to say, an item, just a few hundred gold at this point to finish off that tier 3. Maybe he needs one more afterward, but he's going to be able to hit that power spike that you're expecting out of a Mercury. And all of a sudden, Cuvo's going to have a much more difficult time taking that fight, although the attack speed, the chin size, essential to Akali already online. So maybe the one-on-one in the jungle is definitely going to lean a little more towards one side, but Vote doesn't have the same security. Same thing for Dardes. So I think there's going to be a much larger opening for Panatom here in the next couple minutes.
Well, as we approach the 18-minute mark in the game now, the next Gold Fury spawn, which will be an Oni Fury, just for the heads up, we'll see a bit more attention paid to both objectives now, because one team fight, the way it happened last time there for the Warriors, they could transition that to a Fire Giant soon after as the game goes on. And I'm definitely looking towards Shinto and this Raijin, who's having a great game so far, to try and cause some problems. Dardes is under some pressure in mid there. Saw a blink from Julio and the beads consumed from Dardes just in response to make sure that's taken away. Nice little work just to keep forcing those relics. And that's now an opportunity maybe for the Mercury gank. But talking of the Mercury, he might be ganking duo finally.
Unfortunately, I mean, look, Vote has, well, no beads, but has ult, so if he reads this fast enough, he might be able to get out, but this is a very long-haul jump for him.
What's wrong, you?
But you got to get aggressive if you want it.
Yeah, you can hear Leviathans almost in my mind going, hey, I can wrap around here, says Wrong You, realizing they've got a window. But Neil has smelt the danger, and all teams on Warrior, all of the Warriors just look on high alert right now for an engage from somewhere from this Mercury. As Panitom sneaks up this left-hand side, it looks like, trying to get closer to Vote and catch him on the lazy back. The back gets caught right in time of range, and the full combo connects. The dash is good, but the major look was better. Wasn't even needed, though, because Yarkov threaded that basic. And Wrong You, meanwhile, says, how you doing, Warriors? You are not coming in the south of the jungle while my boys are busy giving Vote a hiding.
I'll zone for you if I have to. And now I've got Julio over here as well to help it out, just to make sure they're safe. Nika's maybe the premier target in my mind to take down, but that's another stack for the Rage for Panatom. And again, that just slowly creeps forward to being a bigger power spike. He's 2 levels down. He's actually on par with Neil Ma right now in terms of levels, so anything that could get him even just a tick ahead is going to feel better.
Credit where it's due, though. Warriors are still in the lead in this game. They're up in kills, they're up in gold. I know we've been talking about Leviathans a lot. Well,
yeah.
It's mainly based off how game one went more than anything. One came here to play, the other one kind of woke up, it feels like to me, in game two, realizing just how drastic the performance was in game one. But now the Only Fury is about to spawn, and the game could change again as both teams start to group towards this left-hand side of the map. Checking in the relic situation, the beads on Dart is still down for another 50 seconds. He's the only one that could be exposed if pressured.
Yeah, what, 3 pairs of beads otherwise for the Warriors still available? So limits where Julio's going to be able to get a lot of pressure, but it kind of turns into the combination. What can Julio do, but on top of that, what can Shinto do off of Rongyu and Julio? That follow-up from this Raijin, already level 20 before anybody else in the game, he's going to be the one that I think is kind of, again, the divining rod for them. Showcase where you're going to be able to go, where the damage is going to be, and ultimately find them the kills they need.
Nick is a bit far forward here, but steps away from the frost from Rongyu, just reading that one. So Leviathans were looking for a 4-man pinch on him as the rest of the Warriors were around. Kiva Fred, meanwhile, this game, I know I've not spoken about that much, but he is 2-2-2, level 17, 2-level lead over Panitom here so far, and he's starting to get to that critical mass build. You're looking at Akali's that everyone talks about, the late game prowess that could come into play. Taking into account, Neil Mod did pick up that Kasari too, which is going to provide a bit of attack speed for all his team. Pressure in mid from Leviathans, so was exposed, this Only Fury.
But didn't expect to see this pressure. I mean, they're burning it down insanely fast.
Oh, yeah.
Neil has to get aggressive soon, or they're just not going to be able to do anything.
3 damage dealers, specifically with the jungler there too, with all that crit, will definitely help out. Panitom was charging in with the Sonic Boom there, looking for a target potentially. Trapped in the corner though as the damage came over the wall from Dardes to cause problems with Nika and Neil in tow. Warriors are just sat back waiting at the moment. They're not engaging. Why?
That's honestly a good question. Like,
Are they
Nika, I mean, he
counterpunching?
just hasn't necessarily been in a great position for it. And I think, honestly, the big thing is distraction factors, right? Julio's saying, I'm over here. You got to be worried about me making a loop around. But more importantly, you're looking at Rongyu. He's just going to turn into a wall at some point.
For my money as well, I guess it's the lack of engage they've really got on the Oni Warriors side. I mean,
Yeah,
you're looking at a blink from Nika, you're looking from a Cuvo initiation, you don't really want your Kali initiate if you can help it. And then last but not least, I guess you're looking at a hammer from Neil Mar. And that's really your options for the most part. At the Pyromancer though, Neil Mar is trying to dissuade the Pyromancers from doing so. Nika juggles Shinto into the egg, gets the beads out of him, and Nika's going to slow down Yako in the front. Rest of the Warriors are now on their way. Vote last to arrive. Neil at half health though as Dardes comes on in. Pyro now pulled by the Warriors as they look for it for themselves. Meanwhile, Leviathans have not given up yet. They're coming back in force. A little bit late for Panitom coming in. This could be the secure and will be of the Pyromancer to the Warriors, who play that very well. Full credit to Nika, but a blink from Rongyu gets the beads out of Kivo, traps Nika in a wall situation, and the rest of the Leviathans are on the way, but Nika is just so tanky.
I mean, you just need so much more. He goes up into the air with
Sonic
hardcore,
Boom.
but they just don't have anything to burn him down.
Sonic Boom came through from Panitom, didn't find a target properly. As
Cuvo.
Vote now walks in two. Dardes and Vote sat in the back trying to live, but the following shot from Yorkor, the Master's will. Panitom went in, went to punch Dardes, and Vote secure the kill. Julio next on the list to die as Vote Jingwei
Shinto?
in, but it won't be enough. Meanwhile in the back, Shinto still trying to get the kill on Dardes, and will do so. He was left alone, got through the whole backline towards Dardes, and this could be an interesting 1v1, but Vote sustain will come into play a little bit there, and the autos are weaved. 3 for 3 though. Warriors advantage because their hunter is alive. They could look for some towers.
At least knock some things down. They have a lot of pressure on right, so I expect this tier 2 to start feeling some of that in terms of the autos. But that just goes to showcase, I mean, a good engage from the Leviathans, really textbook, except it's all in on the solo laner who just doesn't care. He has that Sona Gaia, you see the procs come through, he does not worry at all throughout that fight and continues that onslaught, turns it around. I honestly say big ups to Shinto because he's the only saving grace for the Leviathans. That is a much worse fight for them if he doesn't pick up his 2 kills.
Yeah, good point, because then that would be a fire giant, wouldn't it? And then maybe towers on top of that. And speaking of the towers, Warriors did end up falling back there. I thought they would have looked for that tier 2 tower. They were a little bit concerned about the respawn, I would say, of Panitom coming through, so instead think to go back and farm in their jungle some more. That engagement, though, if you look at it, Panitom has caught up in farm again. I was saying he was a level or 2 down. Well, just about a level, I guess, now that Carly catches up, but he's closing the gap a little bit more so. And I will love to see a battle between Cuvo, Fred, and Panitom 1v1 in this at some point. We may get a chance to see that later.
You've got the attack speed from Kali, the Hasten Katana just now online, so Cuvo's going to stick to you more than you would like. But that Deathbringer finish looks like potentially a Wind Demon as well coming out from Pandatom here soon. And that is 2 punches, right? So Cuvo needs a lot of hits. His stun will be great. His ult destruction will be great in terms of surviving in a 1v1 area like that. But Panatom's going to be able to ult to the backline very simply and fine. Dardes, Vote, Cuvo make quick work of them.
Yeah, the only problem is that the backline damage is pretty high, specifically with Vote swinging away there as well. You've got to be respectful of the amount of damage he will put out. 25 minutes in, though, 9-10. Moment the gold is relatively even. It really is an experience. Well, it's going to become more and more marginal now as everyone's starting to reach level 20. It's going to be item choice in the position and ward wars in the jungle. Speaking of the wards, a lot of sentries down for Oni Warriors right now. Trying to create full vision and deny any from the Leviathans.
And each team still has 3 sentries in their pockets. They are ready for a Fire Giant fight. And it's just going to come down to where you stand. Like Julio and Nika, everyone knows where they are now. They just walked across it. It's going to be not just itemization, but engagement. Like you had mentioned, Warriors have kind of been relaxing, but that worked better for them in the last fight.
Yeah.
They were able to retaliate as opposed to set it up. And I think Julio, stepping as far forward as he can, he's got a lot that's going to help him out. You had just pointed it out, but the Witchblade to help deal with some of that attack speed,
yeah,
it's going to keep him alive a little bit longer. But, I mean, with the retaliation the Warriors had, I don't know if it's enough.
Julio rotates to the right. Cuvo just trying to clear out this wave, and Nika was here, but blinking from Julio, looking for a huge play on Cuvo. Fred just out of range, though, to find that Fearless, and that blink consumed for now. Only 90 seconds left on it, however, and neither team looking at the FG just yet. And as you were saying, I think that's what Warriors have played this game. It doesn't feel like they've gone for a lot of kills. They've not gone to try and force fights every time. What they've done is tried to play the map, tried to play when the right time is to do the objectives, and that's what's allowed them to battle back into this game. Well, Leviathans haven't managed to run away with it the way they did in Game 1.
Like you had said, glimpses of greatness from them in the playoffs, and now they're just showcasing why that exists. Look, Game 1, we've seen it from the Warriors today, we've seen it from the Scarabs in the past. Sometimes they just get out of hand, and they get out of hand quickly.
And
you just have to bounce back.
That's also because of the new map too. The changes, the update.
Oh yeah, there's so much.
These guys aren't they are all scrimming, sure, but they're not scrimming as many games as they would like to before having to play their first competitive game. So we get a live look at all their almost experimentation, or where their experiments have led them to so far. As now Julio and Nika continue to duel, the Warriors dance around the FG pit.
There's a fun test over here. As actually, Nika looks to get aggressive here.
Beats down on Shinto there as well. That's a huge win for them. Nika would have called that to the team. But who would be the target to really look at him then? I'm guessing you're looking at Cuvo, Fred, if anyone, to try and find that. Maybe the Appalada Dardes too, just to prevent the Thunder Crash away. Fire Giant leashed here by Warriors. It's taking its time. You see the Leviathans just watching on. Pyromancer spawning soon. And both teams dancing.
But this rock that they're hanging around for the Leviathans is why I try to get into it. There's a good freeze. It's Nika, though. I don't know that it's going to be a lot, but look at Julio.
Yeah, Julio went in at the same time as the focus was on Nika. Sonic Boom, they'll prove 3 members of the Warriors, and the Warriors have to fall back in tow. Cuvo Fred got low, but he does still have his ultimate available, I believe. Now Shinto chasing in, looking at Neil Mar. The front line has to use his ultimate defensively. Now it could be a turnaround again if we want to see the Warriors go. Neil escapes for now. Julio hunting on the left, has his blink. Won't find his Palitom uses a Sonic Boom there to go back in, but he took a ton of damage too. The health bars of both teams low. Only really Shinto, Dardes, and Nika in a healthy spot right now. And some of that is because of Shinto's build path here with all this sustain.
I mean, he is not worried at all. Well, maybe should be here. Dardes is right behind Nika, and this is going to cause a lot of trouble for them. You've got hardcore. I don't know if that's something you can pursue. Survivability that comes through. I'm looking towards, 3 relics that were burned there for the Warriors versus 4 or 5 now that are down for the Leviathans. That's where that big fight and big win really comes down. You get out, nobody dies, nothing crazy happens. But because the Warriors have so much more available, this next fight's going to be a lot easier.
So interested to see how those engagements played out there too. Both fights at the same time happened. One near the Pyro, Carrie's looking at Julio. Meanwhile, you see Nika getting focused by Rongu on the right-hand side. Definitely felt like a rope-a-dope from Leviathans there, because you expect the collapse on Nika to happen, and instead it's on the left-hand side. Julio was lucky, though, to survive that little engagement with the amount of damage he took. He did buy his windows well enough. Now the dance is going to continue a little bit longer. It does leave the Primal Fury available for someone to look over and take maybe a Mercury, maybe a Carly before the FG if you've got control here. But neither side really taking an advantage in game 2.
And I'm keeping my eye on it because positioning right now around the Fire Giant means so much more. It's specifically where the Leviathans are right now, where they were hanging out before. There's a new camp over there. That rock's a little bigger than it used to be.
That's true.
It's got to be a little arduous to get used to because it's just not. It's been the same all year. Now you have a little more room if you want to get around there, if you're looking for the loop. And that is now causing trouble for the Warriors.
Relics starting to come back up, specifically on the side of Leviathans, more importantly, I would say. Yeah, beads up now for Shinto. He might start to look aggressive again. Panitom, too, will have his beads and blink available soon. As I'm interested to see exactly what happens next in this one, because I want to see a bit of split push almost now, Gore. I want to see someone try to open the map up a little bit more, because neither side feels comfortable. I love the engagements, by the way. It's just very slow, very methodical so far. Very European, almost.
Well, Panatom's given a little bit of what you'd like to see. I mean, he goes over there, clears some camps on the left-hand side, but nothing like the Primal Fury you had highlighted. No big split push onto a tower or anything. Vote as Apollo last game. If it was in this state, it would have been the perfect time to have an Apollo. Unfortunately, Jingwei can still get that done. Her passive is so good for re-engage.
Nika getting aggressed on by Julio and Rongyu, but you can just see how little damage they're actually doing to him at this stage of the game too. Panitom now down on the right-hand side too. All 5-10 members of these two teams. Neil going to try and transform privately in discretion in the changing room to make sure no one knows this is coming out. And they're all in on Julio here on the left-hand side, who has to Lawbringer away. But that's an ult for ult exchange. And I don't think the Leviathans will feel too bad about that, considering that Fafnir ultimate with the Coerce is very good for the Warriors' composition.
I mean, Kali Coerce as well as Jingwei Coerce is going to feel devastating if he gets to the back line. But the good news is that some survivability ripped away from Julio, right? So it's a give and take for both teams. It's just going to depend on the Fire Giant.
I think it's just more the cooldown reduction differential between the two of how often the Neilmar's ultimate is up versus the the Lawbringer from Tyr. But now Leviathan's sense a window. They're going to pull the FG. FG is very tanky. It's an enhanced version, remember. So this could be a game winner for whoever gets this at this stage now, because the towers will be like paper to the enhanced Fire Giant. But neither team is going to full-on take it. I think it's going to take some time for both teams to really do it here, especially with the Warriors watching on.
You know, something that hasn't been a talking point, we haven't really got to see it just yet, but I want to see how that Draugr might interact with an enhanced Fire Giant, how long it could maybe help save some of those towers.
Sure.
And unfortunately, when an EFG goes down, most of the time that's the end of the game because your team wiped around the fight. You don't let those go down for free. You have to pay the iron price to make sure those stay. Even if it goes to the other team, you want to try to knock down 2 or 3 of them in the process. And the Leviathans have been hovering it. They've started it. They're trying to get the Warriors to bite. They just won't commit.
Well, this consistent pressure around the Fire Giant from both teams means that people haven't continued to farm up as much as expected. Cuvo, Fred, and Panitom not at 6 items right now. They're actually selling their starters here to make sure they can transition to the later builds a little bit quicker and get as much power available and penetration damage more than anything else online for this next engagement. So we just have to see exactly where they go with their final item now, because not upgrading those starter relics gives me a sign of I wonder if it's going to be a specific Titan's Bane and stuff for both, or is it going to be something more defensive?
Well, I really like that Panatom's gone for that Bloodforge just to get the shield on kill.
Speaking of going in, Nika goes in and gets juggled by Julio at the back end, and Nika's still alive. Neilmar is owning space. Cuvo looking at the backside, looking at Shinto, but he leaps over Shinto, and Shinto watches him like some flying pig fly over and goes, no problem, I'll just beads underneath and walk away. Nobody dies again, as that was a Warriors attempted engage off the back of Leviathans going in onto Nika.
2 pairs of beads burned on the side of Leviathans, though, so it makes it a little easier to lock down Panatom and Shinto. Maybe not as easy as you'd like. They definitely have been squirrely and able to get away. But because of the way, like you said, this fight and these team fights have been going, it's more of attrition more than anything. Who can eke out a little bit more gold than the other? I mean, duo lane has been long forgotten at this point. I see Vote over there for the first time in like 10 minutes.
It does feel a little bit like a domino effect is going to happen when one member falls of these two teams. The rest of the team, it's going to be a real collapse. We saw the last couple of engagements. They're not bad fights, though, either. I think the one thing that fans would be like snooze fest, they were kind of looking at each other, but this is a real scrap of like who's going to get the better end of the engage, the counter initiation, and then the tail end of the fight, which is where we saw earlier on a fight go in favor of Warriors, but Shinto made a good play to make it a double. Primal Fury, though, going to go to Leviathans, and I think this is a good call from them. Primal Fury going down, We know what this buff is for. We just don't talk about it that much.
And it's able to help burn this fire giant down, right? It's literally the best case scenario for you is to get that right now. You had highlighted a few minutes ago, like, man, somebody just go split push that, grab that. It doesn't matter if you get the towers.
Yeah.
And it's just so difficult. I had highlighted maybe Vote being able to do it because he's got enough sustain that he should be able to live through it and enough damage that he'll kill it in plenty time. And Jingwei has a great passive for getting back into the fight. But it works even better if you get it with your Mercury, you collapse in on it, and now you get the full rotation, you're going to be able to burn that Fire Giant really fast if the Warriors give you an opportunity.
Fire Giant pulled by the Warriors. Julio walking in, Rongyu alongside him, and Nika frozen into a wall again. I've said that a few times, but the damage onto Nika starting to hurt a little bit more than when he does get connected with stuff. Dardes, though, giving some return as Neomar jumps in. Shinto's Thunder Crash down, and Cubo wrapping around the back on the right-hand side. Can Cubo get to the carries in the back line? Looking at Yoko or Shinto, more importantly. Aegis now used. Sonic Boom used by Paniton, but the Sonic Boom didn't find a target at all. Cubo Fred, though, did finally take down Shinto. Rongyu trying to help out Yoko up against Nika as Cubo chases for another kill. Julio's frontlining antics are coming to an end, though, as he tries to fall back to a tier 2, but the hammer over the wall from Neomar may have spelled his demise. Luckily enough, Rongyu was there, and the chase was over. Warriors find 1 kill, by the way, and now they're going to go back towards this FG. This is how close Game 2's been in terms of these picks and bans and compositions.
Panatom was able to back, he has full health, technically able to get in, but no ult, so he's going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. It's the hard call of, do you actually want to commit to that? He would have died for that FG.
And I think the hardest thing we're seeing in this game, and it's one thing that probably a lot of the streamers who are watching this and following along with us are saying too, neither team really has great engage. And this is the awkwardness of it. You're looking at a blink freeze from Rongyu, which realistically, Ymir's been using the wall to prevent the escape route and then freezing on in on Nika consistently. Then on the other side from Warriors, you're really looking at Neomar engage and the rest of the team following up, unless Nika manages to strip some beads. It's very, very tricky for both teams to find the engage, and that is why we stall so much.
And it becomes a great news for Warriors fans because not only have they been maybe not just lacking in engage on the side of the Leviathans, but every time I see a wall go up, a freeze come out, Julio go for the Fearless, it's on a Nika of all people. Like, they're trying to burn down the solo laner, and they've gotten closer and closer every time. But it's such a heavy commit to kill, or to not even kill somebody. If you can get Cuvo, if you get Dardes, all of a sudden you change the pace of the game with that. But they're trying to kill off Nika maybe too much here for their own good.
Well, it's an enhanced fire giant from the Warriors here, but looking at the Leviathan's positioning so far, they're not willing to surrender too much in the jungle or too much in terms of Phoenixes. The left-hand side will fall down, but mid lane, you can see Cubo just trying to hang around there looking for it instead. Panitom's going to get aggressive towards him there with that blink initiation, but won't be able to find it as Cubo leaps away. Now you see the Warriors turn their attention towards mid, looking for the tier 1 tower into tier 2, trying to extrapolate this gold lead potentially and expose these Phoenixes. The problem is, though, Gore, it's taking them a while.
Yeah, I mean, just now got the tier 1, they got the tier 2 over and left, but they've already burned 2 minutes of their Fire Giant buff, so it is definitely taking a slower roll. At this pace, you can still get a Phoenix, but it's a lot more pressure that you're going to have to apply, and they're putting it all on mid, which, admittedly, it's a great Phoenix to get. Not quite as good as left just because of the proximity to Fire Giant, but at this point, I think anything is better than nothing.
Neomar starts to rotate around to the mid lane and take the pressure of the tier 2 tower. Cube on the left, Nika on the right, trying to isolate the Leviathans who are turtling under this tier 2 tower as they pressure the dive carries the backside, and it's Dardes under a lot of pressure. Shito gets the kill, Sorso Vote gets pressured by Panitom, and now Vote could end up dying there too. Neomar has to deal with Yorko, Shinto, and Rongyu in his face, and he's going to fall down too. That was a Fire Giant composition of the Oni Warriors getting aggressive, and Leviathans pulled the trigger in action before they could set up, and now Vote is on the run.
Panatom has been looking for this kill. Had to be cautious early on. Just walks over the ward. Should know Vote's nearby. I don't know where he is exactly. And so Vote's going to be able to play that. But like you said, that was a Fire Giant that has just been turned on its head. And you're not looking to kill Nika anytime soon, but you just got a tier 2 of your own. You might even be able to get a Phoenix.
They're looking at it, you know. I wasn't sure if they would, but wrong use here. Panitom finally joins in Cubo Fred and Vote on defense here. Nika was trying to get back towards this defense too, but Julio's just causing him problems in doing so. As now Nika gets walled into the corner. Beautiful little wall from Rongyu there just to secure. But I think Shinto may have had it with that damage anyway.
Well, that's 40 seconds now without Nika that they're going to be able to utilize and leverage this advantage. The problem is Phoenix, where do you go? I mean, Dardes is respawning, Neil's just about to be back. You don't really want to dive a Phoenix right now. It's dangerous. And Oni Fury's coming up. Maybe that helps you out a little bit, but this is actually great for the Warriors. Nika dies, unfortunately, but just soon enough that it's not like a Fire Giant's going to fall on the other side, and it's not like they're going to be able to get anything huge out of it. The Leviathans, that's a great pick, but can they do it at a time that means a little more to them in terms of objectives?
What a wild weekend so far. I mean, we just got a game one that was 20 minutes between these two, and now we're going deep in this one, especially because right now we're waiting for the next FG to spawn. I don't think we'll see Warriors or Leviathans get aggressive again in terms of trying to take down towers of Phoenixes here. This only minion wave, if anything, will just give Warriors a tiny bit more farm. Checking in with builds, though, these power potions. Expect to see them littering inventories over and over again now as they keep returning to base, buying more wards, buying more vision. Can we see wards placed real quick, Doug? I'm just interested in how many we've seen in this game, because the longer it goes, yeah, 26 for the carries, mainly from the Warriors, though. More importantly, placing more the majority throughout the game. Blooming Nika, though, doesn't do anything. Laziness. Speaking of this, Panitom versus Cuvo. Thought Cuvo had that, but Panitom might be able to chase with speed buff. Changes his mind.
I was looking at it. It's one of those things. Normally we see potentially like an Erendite that could come through. Of course, his ult had already been used, but maybe if that item was online there for Panitom, he has the movement speed to close the gap, and it wasn't enough there to be able to pick it up. But if he's just like 2 steps closer to Cuvo, that's a big kill.
Oh, yeah. It could have gone either way, that one, though, between the two. That's the Battle of the Assassins that we were hoping for. Leviathans, though, realizing they've got a bit of a window on the right-hand side with a minion wave of Onis coming up here. Warriors did not deal with them effectively enough around this right-hand side, and so a tier 2 tower is taken away by Leviathans, opening up and exposing the right-hand side Phoenix. Neil Maher, though, on the front lines, does have that Magi's Cloak available this time, trying to provide himself a bit more survivability and sustain in these engagements. Oh, the Fire Giant was being done. I didn't even see it. Oh, my goodness me. They snuck it away without the Warriors really knowing, or even the casters, to be honest. My apologies for that. And straight away, Warriors retreat back to their base. And now it's on to Leviathans of exactly what they do next.
See, if I were aggro, this is where I'd play it cool and be like, I saw it was going down the entire time. I knew it going. But no, that's a surprise even
We got the same vision as you guys. Like, yeah,
that they engage on that. But that's a good showcase of what this team composition is able to do. The way they burn that down, maybe even harkening back to that Primal Fear. I guess it would have gone to the Oni Fury that was in between. Either way, they burn the FG fast. And they got rid of an EFG and only lost a tier 1 and a tier 2 in the process. Now, in a better position, granted, good fights from the Warriors have been happening the last few times. This is going to be the spot for the Leviathans to turn it around. There's only 1 tower left for them to go. So that means a Phoenix almost has to fall, or you're going to fall doing it.
Yeah, the question is how can the engage really go off here? You're looking at Julio with the Blink initiations, the Lawbringers in, and again, with the help of the Ymir. I wouldn't be surprised, though, to maybe see Panitom initiate to mix things up a little bit in this engagement. The problem is he puts himself in an awkward spot and his beads are down, so maybe not expect that just yet. Left-hand side, though, is all the focus. Minions in mid and right-hand side will delay any sort of aggression there. Straight 5-on-5 on left. What can the Warriors do to defend?
Well, there's about 2.5 minutes, a little over, on that Fire Giant buff right now. So Panitom, look, if you need to wait 20 seconds for those beats to come up, I think they have the wiggle room to do it. They just keep the Warriors in this kind of state of limbo.
Neilmar does have a very deep ward just by Panitom there, you can see on the map too. Just to make sure he's got vision of this Sonic Boom being charged or how deep the Leviathans are playing. Wall already dropped by Rongyu, who takes a couple of tower shots, but there's not enough wiggle room there for Yorko to throw in a basic and check his damage output onto this Phoenix.
I mean, that's such a great word placement in terms of where they're going to be able to catch Panitom, but he's going to go in soon.
Blink on Dardes, though, and Dardes is nearly dead already to Julio 1v1. The follow-up shot from Yorko comes through, and I believe he also hit him with that ultimate too. Panitom's short-range Sonic Boom will be used for a second as Cubo now into the pit, has to use his ultimate and his beads to continue the chase.
What a wall!
The wall from Rongyu will prevent Panitom's death. He will still fall to Neil Maher, though, with the tail end as Nika and Neil try to combine to get some kills. Double kill, though, for Shinto. Now Yorko gets the kill. The base is broken, and a crazy engage off the back of Julio secures the kills, secures the Phoenix, and secures the game. It took Leviathans 42 minutes to do what they did in 20 for game 1. but they will come out victorious.
Much stronger showing from the Warriors that time around. And honestly, look, there was a Kali still at the end there. If that Beads was available, if they had any sort of engage, I don't know that it's actually over yet. That is the best time to maybe try and turn it around. But unfortunately for Cubo, not enough that is going in his favor. The Leviathans played that really well. Sneaking that FG turned everything around. Otherwise, we're still sitting around that Fire Giant.
Completely agree. Could have gone for a lot longer, that one, if they didn't manage to sneak that one away. But great play from the Leviathans. And Warriors fans, probably happy with how Game 2 went. A lot better performance from them. We'll break it all down, though, on the desk after this.
Hold on. He doesn't want to finish off the other kill. He wants more of the back. Oh, no, he's going to do it to him. Gets Paul, needs the cooldown. Julio nearly got the double on the back end. This man is nuts. 202 on the tier out of the solo.
That's right. The Atlantis Leviathans stock is on the rise, and that means it's time for you to go to shop.smiteproleague.com and pick up some awesome Insight Apparel Company apparel for some of your favorite teams. And maybe it's the Atlantis Leviathans after this big 2-0 win now find themselves 3-0 on top of the standings here in Phase 2 of the SPL. That is shop.smiteproleague.com. Check out some of the sweet team apparel we've got. We've also got awesome Pride merch available as well. We personally have the shirts down at the bottom there. That's what Gormizer has been wearing today, and all proceeds from that will be donated to the Trevor Project. So it's great merch for a great cause. That's shop.smiteproleague.com. So make sure to get in there and check it out. Now we have to talk about the Atlantis Leviathans versus the Oni Warriors game number 2. Mifflin's with me one final time today to break this one down. Miff, this one's a little closer. The Oni Warriors show some fight in this game. They don't get blanked in a 20-minute slaughter.
Don't bring it up again, man.
I have to, because that's the story of the game. And so there is some pushback, but it was a few slip-ups, it feels like, and the Leviathans are a good enough team. You give them an inch around any of these objectives, and they'll make you pay.
Yeah, you don't have to give them the inch. Sometimes they earn it themselves. Wrong You, in particular, has a really good performance on this Ymir. Shinto's damage output on Raijin, obviously incredibly high as well. Every single individual piece had to work out here.
Yeah,
the
wow,
only
Shinto.
question mark I had where there was a couple questionable plays from Panatom going towards a god that we haven't seen from him too much, but certainly we saw the heat is there. He was setting up for his team, and here's one play just where that happens. Sets up for Yarkor to pick up that kill.
Yeah, I think the carries filled the space that was provided to them by the front line very well here in this matchup. Shinto was aggressive on the Raijin, jumping in, finding damage. Yarkor was there in the back line as well to find that damage. I think Julio, despite some early stumbles in that lane, was able to put together a pretty good performance on this tier here as well. And talk about Wrong You here, Miff. I mean, felt like the walls were just not going to miss
this
here
the one?
in this game.
This wall right here, Dave, this one freaked me out. Through the wall, nearly
I can't see
blind
anything there. He
to
just-
line it up. You just, yep, now you're stuck, Nika. Unfortunate situation. The Leviathans, I think, have proven time and time again that Ymir is a god that they should not be allowed to play.
Yep.
I've gone on record saying that I think Wrong You has kind of perfected this god. We've seen what the peak of Ymir can look like, and it looks pretty good.
It does look pretty good. 31,000 and 30,000 damage, respectively, for Yarkor and Shinto. Also looks pretty good here. Remember, Wrong You had the Ymir banned against him, I believe, in game number 1, and then gets it here in game number 2. This Leviathans team, it feels like just the threats top to bottom on this roster. It's got to make pick bans against this team kind of difficult, because for so long we've had the conversation of how are they going to flex into this meta, but Miff, I think they're showing that the new meta suits them pretty well.
Yeah, maybe they're the ones that's going to be setting the meta this time around. Look, it's hard to argue against this Leviathans roster. I know that there's been memes around these boys in the past, back when they were under the moniker Sanguine. It was these guys can't play until 25 minutes, and I guess then they're the best team fight team. Is that even a meme? You're kind of just singing their praises right there. And then here in Season 8, it's, these guys only play the
really
meta really, really well gods. They know how to draft a good gods.
Yeah.
But look, these guys are all threats. They're all competitors, and they all have that drive to win, and I think that is so fun to watch.
It is an absolute blast to watch. Yarkor has been a lot of fun to watch as well, and hopefully this interview that I have with Yarkor will be exciting to watch as well. Yarkor, first and foremost, congratulations. Big win for you guys here over the Oni Warriors. That'll stamp you secured into first place now with the game differential. You have less games played than the Bolts, so you're officially in first place here in Phase 2 of the SPL. What has the team been working on kind of in this gap? Because there's so much that's been shifting around. The meta has changed at the start of this week. What has been the forefront of your game that you guys feel like you needed to focus on?
I think we just enjoying so much playing like right now. The thing is, SMITE has been like more fun to play, and that's opened the room for us to. I mean, we always enjoy playing the game.
Right.
So right now we're just like trying new things, seeing new builds, and just trying things out and see what it works and what it doesn't work, and just learn from that.
And I am curious because I'm liking watching your theory crafting, all the other hunters as well. Still very early into this new update, and I imagine things will settle a little bit in the future. Chiron, we've seen him today. We saw Apollo a little bit. Is any hunter kind of fair game, you think, at this point, or are there a few that are starting to stand out as the best hunters at the moment?
I think the like Chiron and Dance are still like pretty good. Like they are top tier gods like before even the patch. Then they remain the same. I feel like there is a few magical hunter that people need to keep an eye on because they are really good too. I'm not gonna say which ones, but there is a few of those that are really good. So
I'll let you keep that one in your back pocket there, Yarkor, and look forward to maybe seeing some of those hunter picks in the future. Congratulations on the win today. Congratulations on being 3-0, and best of luck in your future matches.
yeah, thank you.
Always great to hear from Yarkor. Excited to see what some of those hunters are that he's talking about moving forward. Miff, this is now a team that, alongside the Olympus Bolts, are 3-0 here in the SPL. So I think the Bolts Leviathans matchup is one that's highly anticipated. Can any team beat these guys? The way the Leviathans are playing right now, I think it's going to be difficult right up there up top of the Bolts.
Hey, they've got some people on their heels, man. Some personal favorites. I think they're going to step up a little bit as these weeks start to roll through. Camelot Kings, only fallen once so far here in Phase 2. I think we can expect to see them have a pretty nice rise. And, well, Jade Dragons being 0-2, I'm not sure is too indicative of where they should be so far. Yeah, not often you got to look that far down the list, for these guys. But Jade Dragons have been struggling a little bit here at the beginning of Phase 2. I don't think you can expect them to stay down there.
No, for what it's worth, the Jade Dragons have pulled a very difficult card to start off Phase number 2. They have the Leviathans to start off this weekend, so that was their second loss, and the Leviathans roll through the Oni Warriors. It was about time we got a non-3-game set here this weekend, and a convincing performance from the Leviathans over the Oni Warriors. We'll see to it that this day ends, I won't say quickly, but faster than it would have if the Oni Warriors had completed that Game 2 turnaround. Dragons, Valkyries start off the day tomorrow. Solar Scarabs, Camelot Kings. Miff, I think there's some intrigue in those matchups there. It's a really big bounce-back opportunity for this Jade Dragons team, the ability for the Valkyries to show some turnaround maybe in that first matchup. I look towards the Scarabs and the Kings, though. How much intrigue do you think there is between those two teams? Do you think it could be a pretty fun one to watch?
I mean, can't sleep on the Solar Scarabs, man. They do take out the Jade Dragons inside of the SPL, right? That's pretty impressive in its own right. Yep. But I think if we go by not just Phase 2, but Phase 1 as well, you can say that the Camelot Kings are likely going to be the favorites inside of that matchup. But it's actually that Valhalla Valkyries Dragon set that I'm more excited for. And both teams looking for their first win here. Only one of them going to be able to walk away with a dub in the column.
That's right.
Maybe Jade Dragons lose again?
You going to bet on it?
Nope.
What? Oh, I never said which way. Well, I guess I backed it up on the Jade Dragons losing again, right? So you're not betting on anything, right? I think Miff's been given a stern talking to by Mr. SMITE or something.
Yeah, my lawyer and my accountant.
Your lawyer and your accountant have told you to stop. What a great day in the SPL that we had here. Make sure to tune in tomorrow. We got Jade Dragons versus Valkyries to start off the day. Solar Scarabs versus the Kings to end the weekend. On behalf of myself, Mifflin, all the other casters, everyone back in production, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Peach it.
Boo!